Right now, in this very moment, you're probably doing what every human being does. You're fighting something. Maybe it's a situation that won't change. Maybe it's a thought that won't leave you alone. Or maybe it's that subtle, heavy feeling that life should be different than it is. If you've ever felt tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but soul-tired, tired from holding on, from trying to fix, control, manage, predict, protect, push, then stay with me, because you're about to hear a story of a prince who once had everything: wealth, luxury, power, but walked away from it all to find something the world couldn't give him, and maybe it's the same thing you're searching for, too. Tonight, you're going to discover not how to give up, but how to stop fighting, not how to run away from your problems, but how to lay down the war inside and find something so rare in today's world: true peace. This isn't just another bedtime story. This is a doorway to the wisdom that has brought relief to millions over 2,500 years. And if you listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart, it might just bring you back to yourself. Maybe you're listening right now at 1 a.m., mind spinning with all the things you can't quite fix. Maybe you've just stepped away from your busy day lunch break, coffee break, seeking something real. Or maybe, just maybe, you've come here tonight because a quiet voice inside said, enough. Enough fighting, enough pressure, enough pretending. Wherever you are, your bedroom, your car, a quiet corner of your world, welcome. You've made it to a space where peace doesn't have to be earned, where your soul can rest. So before we begin, do something simple. Grab a warm blanket, maybe your favorite pillow, dim the lights, and let your shoulders drop. There's nothing to solve right now, nothing to fix, nothing to do. Just listen, breathe, and let the story unfold. Here's the beautiful truth. Even if you don't catch every word, even if you drift into the deepest, most peaceful sleep you've had in weeks, the ancient wisdom in this story will still find you, because it's not about remembering the words, it's about remembering who you are beneath the struggle. This is not an escape, it's a return. Welcome to my YouTube channel, a sanctuary for stillness, for stories, for truth. And tonight, we stop fighting life, we start flowing with it. The journey begins now. Right now, in this very moment, you're probably doing what almost every human being does, whether they realize it or not. You're fighting. Fighting with something that won't change. Fighting with a mind that won't quiet down. Fighting with the idea that life should somehow be different than it is. Maybe it's a relationship that won't heal, a past that won't let go, a future you keep fearing or chasing. It might not look like a battle, but inside, it feels like one. And if you're here tonight, maybe you're tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from constantly trying to hold everything together. Breathe, because tonight, you're going to hear a story that's over 2,500 years old, but feels like it was written just for you. A story about a prince. Born into unimaginable luxury, he had palaces, power, the love of an entire kingdom. But deep inside, he saw the same struggle you're feeling now. Despite having everything, he still felt something was missing. Something wasn't right, and no matter how much he had, peace was nowhere to be found. So, he did the unthinkable. He walked away. He left behind the crown, the jewels, the comfort, to answer one question: why do we suffer? Even when everything looks perfect from the outside. And more importantly, is there a way out? His name was Siddhartha. You might know him as the Buddha. And what he discovered wasn't another rule or religion or belief. It was something far deeper. He called it the end of resistance. Not giving up on life, but giving up the constant fight against life, because most of our pain doesn't come from what's happening. It comes from our resistance to it. Think about it. Have you ever held your breath in traffic, clenched your jaw in an argument, or wished a moment away just because it wasn't what you expected? That tension, that tightness, that's resistance. And what if the peace you're searching for isn't hidden behind more effort, but revealed when you finally let go? Let go of needing it to be different. Let go of fixing every emotion. Let go of controlling every outcome. Let go not to fall apart, but to fall into something deeper. Right now, as you listen, you might be lying in bed, maybe sitting in your car, or nestled in your favorite corner of the world. If it feels right, drop into the space around you. Notice the silence. Feel the gentle rhythm of your breath. Let the words wash over you like warm rain. There's no pressure to remember anything. This wisdom works even if you drift off to sleep. In fact, the more you relax, the more it sinks in, because what the Buddha taught wasn't mystical or distant. It was real. It was about you, right here, right now, he said. All suffering begins the moment we resist what is. So instead of fighting sadness, let it move through you. Instead of fighting fear, breathe with it. Instead of demanding life to be different, whisper to yourself, this is what it is right now. And that's okay. You're not surrendering to failure. You're surrendering to truth. You're not giving up control. You're giving up the illusion of control. And that's where peace begins. Not in the next job, the next relationship, or even the next thought, but in this moment fully embraced. So tonight, let go of the battle to be better, the battle to be understood, the battle to be somewhere else. Let yourself just be. Exactly as you are, exactly where you are, and maybe, just maybe, you'll feel it, a subtle stillness, a quiet joy, a gentle space where nothing needs to change because, for once, you've stopped changing it. That space is what the Buddha called nirvana, the extinguishing of the flame of resistance, not some far-off spiritual goal. It's this moment fully allowed to be what it is. Let that truth hold you now. No judgment, no effort, just presence. Whether you're listening at 1 a.m. or after a long, draining day. Know this, you're not alone in your struggle, and peace is closer than it feels. So curl up in your blanket, dim the lights, and if it feels right, whisper this softly to yourself. I am safe. I am here, and I don't need to fight anymore. Welcome to my YouTube channel, where we don't fight life, we learn to flow with it. The journey has already begun, and it's taking you not away from yourself, but back home, back to peace, back to presence, back to you. Right now, in this very moment, you are most likely doing what almost every human being has been conditioned to do since birth. You are resisting something. It may be subtle, a small thought whispering that things aren't the way they should. Maybe it's a situation in your life that just won't change. Maybe it's a constant stream of thoughts that refuse to quiet down, spiraling through the same worries, the same what-ifs, the same loop of past and future. Or maybe it's a deep, quiet ache inside, a silent scream from your heart that longs for more peace, more clarity, more ease. If you've ever felt like you're endlessly swimming against the current, trying so hard to hold it all together, yet always just one step away from drowning in the weight of it all, this story is for you. Because 2,500 years ago, a young prince named Siddhartha walked away from everything the world said would make him happy. He had luxury, he had wealth, he had power, he had every earthly pleasure anyone could imagine. But he also had something else, a question that burned within him like fire. Why do we suffer? Why does the mind feel like a battlefield? Why, no matter how much we chase, achieve, or acquire, do we still feel so restless inside? And so, Prince Siddhartha left the palace. He left behind comfort. He left behind identity. He left behind everything he was supposed to be. Not to escape life, but to fully understand it, to discover the root of human struggle, not just his own, but yours and mine, and every single person listening right now. So tonight, wherever you are, in your bedroom lying under a soft blanket, in your car parked beneath a quiet sky, or in some quiet corner of your world where you've finally carved out a moment to just breathe. Let this story meet you exactly where you are. Because the truth, Siddhartha discovered, the truth that turned him into the Buddha, is the same. Truth that still sets hearts free today. It's not about running away from the world. It's not about fighting harder. It's not even about fixing yourself. It's about ending resistance, letting go, not in defeat, but in awakening. So, if it feels right, take a moment and gently close your eyes. Allow your breath to soften. Feel the surface beneath you holding your body. There is nowhere you need to go. There is nothing you need to fix. You are safe here. You are seen here. You are home here. Welcome to my YouTube channel, where tonight we gently release the need to fight life and begin remembering how to flow with it. Let me tell you a story. Chapter 1. The Palace of Perfection before he became the Buddha. Siddhartha lived in a world that most of us can't even imagine. His father, the king, built a life of perfection around him. No suffering, no sickness, no aging, no death, only beauty, only comfort, only pleasure. But Siddhartha felt a quiet discomfort. He noticed his mind was still restless, and one day he stepped outside the palace walls. What he saw changed everything. He saw suffering, a sick man, a frail old man, a funeral procession, and in those moments, his illusion shattered. He realized that no matter how much we try to build perfect lives, life itself is impermanent. He saw what we often avoid, that control is an illusion, and that resisting change, resisting truth, is the root of suffering. Siddhartha began by fighting. He trained in harsh disciplines. He denied his body. He went to war with his thoughts. He chased enlightenment like a prize, but something was still missing. After years of struggle, years of starvation, years of mental battle, he sat beneath a Bodhi tree, not to fight anymore, but to simply be. He let go of striving. He let go of control. He let go of becoming anything, and in that surrender, he woke up. Chapter 3. The End of Resistance Buddha didn't achieve enlightenment by forcing the mind to change. He didn't bully his emotions into submission. He didn't conquer suffering. He observed it. He met it with compassion. He stopped resisting what is dot, and in that moment, he discovered peace that wasn't dependent on outside circumstances. Peace that didn't come and go. With the weather of life, a peace that lived within. You can begin remembering that same truth. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to fix your mind. You don't need to win the battle inside. You, because there is no battle unless you fight it. Chapter 4. You are already whole. What if the feelings you're trying to push away are just parts of you longing to be held? What if the thoughts you're trying to silence are just echoes of a child who was never taught how to feel safe? What if your suffering isn't proof that something is wrong with you, but proof that you're ready to return home to yourself right now? As you listen, you are doing something radical. You are stopping the fight. You are no longer trying to bend the world into your version of peace instead. You are stepping into the stillness that has always been within you, on water, not floating in the air, but sitting quietly, breathing softly, and realizing that in this very breath, you already have everything you need. Chapter 5. Drifting into peace as your body begins to unwind, as your mind starts to settle. Let yourself drift. You don't need to hear every word. You don't need to stay awake. This ancient wisdom works even when you're not trying. That's the beauty of it. The heart understands what the mind cannot, so let your awareness float on. The surface of your breath, softly in, gently out. No effort, no control, just presence. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders melt. Let your eyes rest. And as you lie here, remember, peace doesn't come from making life perfect. It comes from ending the war with what is dot, just as the Buddha discovered beneath the Bodhi tree. The fight ends when we stop trying to change the moment, and instead, simply witness it. Closing, so if your mind is still racing, it's okay. If emotions rise up, They are welcome. If sleep comes, let it. You don't need to do anything anymore. Just be here, right now. This is your moment of peace. And whether you drift into the deepest sleep or simply feel a little more spacious inside, know this: you are not broken, you are not behind, you are not lost. You are life itself, breathing, healing, becoming. Welcome home. The journey doesn't begin someday, it begins now. Good night, it begins now. Good night, and may the wisdom of the Buddha, the peace of your breath, and the stillness of your soul guide you gently into rest. Right now, in this very moment. Pause for just a second. Take a slow breath, in and out. You're probably doing what every human being does. Maybe it's the thoughts that just keep circling your mind, looping over and over again. Maybe it's the constant feeling that you should be different. And if you're tired of trying so hard to hold everything together, if you've been quietly whispering to yourself, "I can't do this anymore," then what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a return. In the noise, 2,500 years ago, a prince walked away from a life of luxury, wealth, and unlimited power. Not because he was bored, not because he was confused, but because he saw something. He saw what you've likely felt, that no matter how beautiful the outside looks, still struggle, still this tension inside us, this invisible war we're always fighting. Prince Siddhartha, who would one day become the Buddha, wasn't looking for a religion. He wasn't searching for a new identity. Slept on stone floors, ate barely enough to survive. He learned from teachers and sages, from masters of meditation and silence. He tried everything and nothing. Worked unto one night under the Bodhi tree, he simply stopped. He stopped running, stopped striving, stopped resisting. He faced every fear, every thought, every craving, every discomfort. And instead of fighting them, he watched them. This moment, just this breath. And in that single breath, he discovered what he would later call nirvana. Not a place, not a mystical land, not changing your circumstances, but learning what happens when you stop resisting life as it is. So wherever you are right now, if you're in your car during a break, feeling overwhelmed, with the lights dimmed, just needing a quiet space to feel again, welcome. Welcome home to the present moment. Feel the ground beneath you. Ask yourself this question gently. What am I fighting right now? It might be a person, a situation, a painful memory. It into awareness. Don't push it away. Feel it. And now say silently, I see you, and I don't have to fight you tonight. Let it be there. Like a cloud passing through the sky, you are not the cloud. You are the sky. You are the one watching. This is the beginning of what Buddha called right understanding. The realization that suffering doesn't come from what happens in life, but from the way we resist what happens. It's the tension between what is and what we think should be that causes pain. We tell about it, this shouldn't be happening. A breakup isn't suffering. It's our mind replaying, why did they leave? I wasn't enough. Suffering is the tight grip we have on how we think things should go. But peace is what happens when we open that grip, when we exhale, when we trust that maybe, just maybe, this moment is enough. And here's the most beautiful part. You don't need to understand every word of this to be transformed. You don't have to remember a thing. This ancient wisdom works even when you're not trying, even if you drift off into sleep. It will stay with you. It will settle into your breath, your bones, your being. So, wherever you're listening from, a quiet corner of your home, a walk beneath moonlight, you've already done the hardest part, showing up. This isn't about giving up. It's about surrendering to the moment so fully that there's nothing left to fight. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness beneath it all, the quiet watcher, the doorway to genuine peace. Let yourself sink into that peace now. Feel the weight of trying dissolve. Feel the breath carry you deeper. No need to force. Been here. Stillness, clarity, compassion, freedom. Tonight, we stop fighting life. And you, dear listener, are right on time. Let go, trust, and rest. For 7 days after his awakening, the Buddha remained seated beneath the Bodhi tree, enveloped in a stillness so complete, so radiant, that it seemed to embrace the entire universe. A deep, expansive peace had unfolded within him, reached far beyond personal relief. It was as if all the tension of lifetimes had been released in a single breath. The weight he had carried, the suffering, the questions, the seeking, had simply dissolved. What remained was clarity, freedom, only to realize the oasis had been within him all along. The pain that had driven his quest, this aching dissatisfaction that underpinned all of life, hadn't merely ended. It had been revealed as a misunderstanding, a misperception about the nature of existence itself, and now, in the glow of realization, the Buddha found himself resting in a joy deeper than emotion, one that would shape the spiritual path of humanity for generations to come. Should I share this? The truth he had seen was subtle beyond thought, profound beyond words, and peaceful beyond description. It wasn't something that could be grasped by intellect alone. It had come not from accumulating knowledge, but from letting go of concepts, of striving, of self. How could he explain that? What people were desperately seeking was what they already were. He knew the world well. He had seen how people cling to desires and fears, how they chase after pleasure and run from pain, caught in an endless loop of becoming. He understood that most were not ready to question the foundations of their suffering, much less release them. They were like people wearing heavy chains for so long they'd forgotten the chains were their end, would resist anyone who suggested they could be free. For a moment, why risk being misunderstood, distorted, turned into yet another dogma? Perhaps it was better to remain in silence, to rest in the vast peace he had found, and leave the world to its own devices. But then, something stirred in him thus, same boundless compassion that had driven him to leave his palace in the first place. He remembered all the beings lost in confusion, yearning for peace, but searching in places it could never be found. He remembered the tired eyes of farmers, the restless minds of seekers, the aching hearts of those who loved and lost and wondered why. How can I keep this truth to myself, he thought, when so many are suffering, just as I once was? He began to see more clearly that not all beings were buried in ignorance. Like lotuses growing in a muddy pond, consciousness exists at many stages. Some are still submerged, unaware of the light above. Others are rising, sensing something beyond their current understanding. And a few, just a few, have reached the surface, chose to speak, not to convert or persuade, but to offer, to light a flame that others could carry. Even if only one person saw what he saw, it would be enough. His first thought was of the 5 ascetics, his companions from the years of extreme austerity. But he could see now that they too were close to blooming. Their sincerity was real, their search was genuine, and so he rose from beneath the tree. And with no urgency, because he had already arrived, he walked to Sarnath, where the ascetics lived. Along the road, those who saw him sensed something unusual. He looked like an ordinary monk, but there was a stillness in his movements, a light in his eyes, and a peace in his presence that made people stop and stare without knowing why. He didn't preach, he didn't announce, he simply was, and that was enough to shift the space around him. When the 5 ascetics saw him coming, but as he approached, their resolve melted. Something about his presence undid their judgments. They found themselves rising, offering water, preparing a seat. The peace around him seemed to pull them into awareness. Though they addressed him by name, Gautama, he gently corrected them. "Do not address me as before," he said. "I am a Tathagata, one who has gone beyond. I have found the way out of suffering, and I have come to share it." At first, they doubted him. "How can you claim realization when you left the path?" they asked. But his words were different. They weren't. clever or philosophical. They were true in a way that bypassed the mind and spoke directly to something deeper. Over the next few days, he spoke plainly. No rituals, no doctrines, just for truths. There is suffering and dissatisfaction woven into the fabric of ordinary life. There is a cause of suffering, our craving, our resistance, our insistence that life be other than it is. There is an end to suffering, not through escape, but through understanding. There is a path to that end way of living, rooted in mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. He called it the Eightfold Path Knot, a set of commandments. Moving from love rather than fear, right? Speech, speaking with truth and kindness. Right action, honoring life in all forms. Right livelihood, working without harm. Right effort, not forcing, but sustaining awareness. Right mindfulness, paying attention to now. Right concentration, resting in the still point beyond thought. And as he spoke, one by one, the 5 men began to awaken, and not to something new, but to something already within them. The first was Kandanga, who cried out, "I see. What you speak of is not something to gain, but something to recognize. It is what I have always been." They became the first members of the saga, the awakened community. And word spread, not through fanfare or sermons, but through presence. Others came, drawn not just by teachings, but by the way the Buddha lived, walking with humility, speaking with clarity, radiating peace. He taught kings and beggars, parents and monks, skeptics and seekers. To scholars, he spoke of wisdom. To farmers, of peace in planting. To rulers, of compassion in leadership. To everyone, he offered the same essential truth. You already possess the peace you seek. Stop fighting. Start listening. For the next 45 years, the Buddha walked barefoot. Across India, he built no temples. He wrote no scripture. He claimed no divinity. He simply shared the way. And when the time came for his body to fade, he offered his final instruction. Be a light unto yourself. Do not rely on my words or anyone else's. See clearly. Live fully. Know for yourself what is true. His awakening wasn't just his own. It was a mirror reflecting the possibility that lives in all of us. Tonight, let this story settle in your heart. Let it remind you that what you're searching for is not far away. It's not hidden in books or found in perfect circumstances. It's already herein, the quiet between thoughts, in the breath you're taking right now, in the awareness that knows you're listening. You don't have to become someone else. You don't have to achieve anything. You only have to stop long enough to recognize what's always been. The Buddha's light was not a flame he held for himself. Your path not by changing the world, but by changing how you see it. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are already home. Rest now, dear listener. Let these words drift through your mind like wind through leaves. Let the light of this ancient story awaken the peace within you. And as you sleep, know this: the journey to enlightenment is not a path you walk. It is the truth you remember. Sweet dreams, and may you awaken to the freedom that has always been yours. Chapter 1. Before the light, the world awaits a sage, long before the world knew him as the Buddha. He was simply Siddhartha, a child born under the silent canopy of Lumbini's sacred trees. The world, though unaware, held its breath for this birth. Something ancient stirred in the wind. Something timeless echoed through the earth. A sage was on his way. The kingdom of Kapilavastu lay in the shadow of the Himalayas, rich in culture and tradition. The air was always thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and sandalwood, and the people spoke of dharma, karma, and the cycles of rebirth. It was in this cradle of spiritual inquiry and ancient customs that Siddhartha Gautama entered the world. His birth was not ordinary. Legends say Queen Maya, his mother, dreamt of a white elephant entering her Sida, powerful symbol of divine conception. She gave birth while standing, holding onto a tree branch in the Lumbini grove. And the infant Siddhartha emerged, not crying but radiant, taking 7 steps and declaring his destiny. "I am the chief of the world," he is said to have proclaimed. "This is my last birth." These stories pass through generations, blend myth and truth into a narrative that transcends history, whether literal or symbolic. They mark the arrival of a soul whose presence would ripple across continents and centuries. King Huddodana, Siddhartha's father, was overjoyed at the birth of a son, a royal heir, a future king. But soon, the joy was touched with unease. The royal astrologers and seers gathered and studied the stars, read signs, and whispered secrets. The child, they said, was no ordinary prince. He would become either a great ruler, Chakravarti, an emperor of the world, or a supreme spiritual teacher, a Buddha. This prophecy troubled the king. He had dreamt of expanding his rule, of securing his lineage through Siddhartha. A warrior, a king, a conqueror of lands. The thought that his son might renounce the world and walk away from power filled his heart with fear. So, he made a decision that would shape Siddhartha's early years. Sheltering the light, determined to shape his son's destiny, King Huddodana built walls around the boy's life. Not just physical walls of palace gates, but emotional, intellectual, and spiritual barriers. Pain, suffering, sickness, aging, and death. These truths were hidden from the young prince. Only beauty was permitted near him. Only joy, only pleasure. 3. Palaces were built for Siddhartha, one for each season. In the summer, cool marble floors and lotus ponds. In the monsoon, cascading curtains and incense-scented halls. In the winter, warm fires and velvet robes. Every sensory delight was offered to him. Dancers, musicians, scholars, servants, there to ensure that Siddhartha knew only comfort. He was educated in philosophy, science, martial arts, and poetry. He learned the Vedas and mastered the bow, but there was a restlessness within him. In moments of solitude, he would wander the palace gardens and gaze beyond the walls. Birds sang songs that echoed like questions. Leaves rustled like whispers of an unseen world. His heart, though surrounded by opulence, remained unsatisfied. The inner stirring, even as a child, Siddhartha showed signs of a deep contemplative nature. One famous tale describes him sitting under a rose apple tree during a plowing festival. While others celebrated and rejoiced, the young boy observed the turning soil. The insects disturbed, the small creatures displaced. He sat cross-legged. In meditation, moved by a sudden awareness of life's fragility, it was his first spontaneous encounter with suffering. A moment unplanned, yet profound. A seed planted in the stillness of youth. His father, noticing these tendencies, grew more anxious. He increased the distractions, grander celebrations, more luxurious gifts, and eventually he arranged Siddhartha's marriage. Marriage and distractions is at 16. Siddhartha married Yasodhara, a cousin of equal nobility, grace, and beauty. Tightly to worldly life, together they shared many quiet moments. Yasodhara was not just a wife, but a companion who sensed the silent unrest in Siddhartha. She saw how his eyes wandered beyond the horizon, how he listened to the night wind like it carried forgotten truths. Still, Siddhartha tried to fulfill his royal duties. He participated in festivals, led councils, practiced martial skills, and even excelled in games and debates. Yet, behind each smile was a subtle ache in the stillness of the night. As moonlight streamed into his chamber and servants whispered through the corridors, he would sit awake, listening, thinking, wondering what lay beyond the gates. What truths were hidden from him? Why did a sense of incompletion persist despite all he possessed? The moment before awakening, some say, the soul remembers even when the mind forgets. Siddhartha's soul, carrying countless lifetimes of searching, could not be silenced by silk robes or golden crowns. The world waited, and within him, something began to stir. Not yet arrived, but its presence loomed like thunder before a storm. The sheltered life, despite its glitter, had become a gilded cage. Let us pause here, as observers of Siddhartha's journey, and reflect. How many of us live in palaces of illusion and routines to avoid confronting the deeper truths of existence? Siddhartha's story, even before he stepped beyond the palace, is a mirror to our own. We, too, feel the stirrings, the longing to find something real in a world of appearances, a world asleep, a soul awakening. The people of Kapilavastu saw in Siddhartha a future king, a symbol of stability, court, and admired his noble bearing. But none could see the quiet revolution building within him. The sages and monks in the forests, however, spoke of change. Whispers traveled like wind through bamboo groves. The Bodhisattva walks among us, they said. A great awakening is near. And in distant lands, without knowing why, seekers felt a shift. The silence carried weight the world awaited. Siddhartha's moment had not yet come, but his journey had already begun. Not with a step into the forest, but with a step inward, a turning of awareness toward the restless call of truth. He was not yet Buddha. He was not yet the teacher who would sit under the Bodhi tree, but he was awake in a way others were not. And that subtle awakening, that first whisper of light in the darkness, is where all journeys begin. Dear listener, to breathe deeply, inhale, feel the breath of the universe move through you. Exhale, release all distraction. Ask yourself, what walls have I built around my own understanding? What truths do I avoid? Where is the quiet voice of awakening calling me? Let Siddhartha's early life remind you that the journey to enlightenment begins not with action, but with awareness. Not with a leap, but with a question. And so, the world waited. And so, Siddhartha listened. And in that listening, the seed of Buddha was already taking root. The next chapter of his life would shake the very foundations of his identity. But now the world rested in anticipation, and the stars, perhaps, burned a little brighter. Chapter 2, The Foresights. The illusion breaks time, moved like a gentle river in the palace of Kapilavastu. The seasons came and went, and the scent of jasmine continued to drift through the royal corridors. Siddhartha grew into a graceful young man, admired by nobles and revered by sages. His father, King Hudodana, remained convinced that if Siddhartha were given enough pleasure, joy, and luxury, the dark truths of life would remain hidden. And in doing so, the boy would remain attached to the world he was meant to rule. But illusion can only last so long. Even the clearest glass becomes fogged with breath, and even the most pristine surface eventually reveals its cracks. Siddhartha's spirit was too vast, too curious, too ancient to be forever confined. A longing stirred within him, not for more pleasures, but for truth. It was during his late 20s that the moment arrived. One evening, as Siddhartha stood on the palace terrace and looked beyond the walls, he turned to Channa, his loyal charioteer and friend. "I wish to see the city," he said softly, "not from these walls. I wish to walk where the people walk." Channa hesitated. He knew the king's orders well. The prince was never to witness suffering or death. But the request was gentle and sincere, and something in Siddhartha's eyes spoke of a hunger deeper than curiosity. And so, under the guise of a routine excursion, Channa arranged a chariot. The gates of the palace opened, and Siddhartha stepped into the world for the first time, the first sight. Old age of the streets were lively with merchants, farmers, and artisans. Music played. Children laughed. The world seemed as vibrant as Siddhartha had always imagined. But then, in a quiet corner near a temple, he saw a man, frail, bent, and wrinkled. His back was curved like a bow, and each step he took trembled. With effort, his teeth were few, his eyes sunken. He gasped with every breath. "Chuna," he asked, "what is this? Why is this man like that?" Chuna looked down. "He is old, my lord. All who live grow old. It is the law of life. Will I become like this man?" Siddhartha whispered. Chuna nodded solemnly. "All must age." Siddhartha sat silent as the chariot moved forward. The palace walls had never spoken of such things. His father had ensured that the old were kept far from his sight. But now, the seed of awareness was planted. The illusion of eternal youth shattered. The second sight, sickness further down the road. Siddhartha saw a man lying by the roadside. His body convulsed. His skin was pale and clammy. He groaned in pain, clutching his stomach. People passed him. By avoiding his eyes, "What afflicts this man?" Siddhartha asked. "He is ill," said Chuna. "Diseases come to all, regardless of age or wealth. None are immune." "Even I?" Siddhartha questioned. "Yes, my prince, even you." A chill passed through Siddhartha. Illness, too, had been kept from his eyes. Now it stood before him, undeniable and raw. He felt helpless watching the man suffer. A question burned in his heart. If pain comes to all, what meaning does pleasure truly hold? The third sight, death a chariot, rolled on. A procession was moving slowly along a side path. People wore white. Some wept. Some walked with their heads bowed. At the center was a bier, and upon it lay a body wrapped in cloth. Siddhartha's breath caught in his throat. "Chuna, what is this gathering? Why do they weep?" Chuna replied gently. "They mourn the dead." "The man on the bier has passed away." Siddhartha's voice trembled. "What does that mean, passed away?" "He no longer breathes, my prince. His life has ended." Siddhartha stared at the lifeless figure. "Will I die too? Will my loved ones die?" "All beings who are born must die," Chuna said. A great silence fell over Siddhartha. The world, once vibrant and joyous, now seemed steeped in impermanence. The music was distant. The laughter felt hollow. The prince, who had never known death now, saw it everywhere. The fourth sight, a seeker but, just as despair threatened to consume him, they passed a quiet grove. There, under the shade of a tree, sat a man dressed in simple robes. His face was serene, eyes closed. He seemed untouched by the noise of the world. "Who is that?" Siddhartha asked. "A Sramana," said Chuna, "a wandering ascetic, one who has renounced the world to seek truth." "Why would someone give up everything?" Siddhartha asked. "To find peace beyond suffering," Chuna replied. Watched the man. Unlike the sick or the grieving, this figure radiated a quiet joy, a sense of clarity. In his stillness, there was power. And in that moment, something clicked within Siddhartha. Not all was hopeless. There was a path beyond sorrow, a possibility. A way. Returned to the palace. The storm within the chariot returned to the palace. But the man who stepped out was no longer the same. Siddhartha's heart had opened to the raw truths of life. Aging, illness, death. The walls of illusion had crumbled. His palace chambers, once filled with charm, now felt like a prison of denial. The laughter of courtiers seemed superficial. The silk robes felt heavy. The perfume in the air was cloying. His son, newly born, was named Rahula, meaning fetter, a chain. Night after night, he sat in solitude. The four sights haunted him, but alongside them was the memory of the fourth man, the seeker, the one who had found a different way. Longing arose, not a desire to escape, but a yearning to understand, to know, to be free. The illusion breaks to foresights were more than experiences. They were revelations. They showed Siddhartha that life, in its most fundamental form, is marked by that no wealth, no beauty, no love can shield one from time. But they also showed him a possibility. The human heart, when turned inward, can rise above its suffering, can find clarity, can discover peace. The illusion that had cloaked his life broke like a mirror. And in the shards, he saw not chaos, but the shape of a path. Guided reflection now, dear listener. Pause, breathe, inhale awareness. Exhale illusion. Ask yourself, what are the truths I avoid? What illusions do I live in? Have you seen your own foresights? Have you witnessed suffering, aging, death? And if so, have you also glimpsed the seeker within you? Siddhartha's awakening did not begin under the Bodhi tree. It began here, in the streets of Kapilavastu, in the simple, undeniable reality of life, and so begins the great journey. Not away from life, but into it. The next chapter will lead him, deeper into the forest, into solitude, into trial. But for now, he sits with his knowing. The illusions are gone, and the path has called. Chapter 3. The search begins 6 years of silence. When a man sees the world as it truly is, raw, impermanent, fragile, something shifts deep within. After witnessing the foresights, Siddhartha could no longer return to the comfort of illusion. The palace, once a sanctuary, had become a golden prison. The joy of courtly life, the laughter of festivals, the touch of silk, all now felt like chains. His heart was stirred by a single, unwavering question. Is there a way out of suffering? Siddhartha did not hate life, nor did he resent it. But he could not accept its miseries as final. And so, one silent night, beneath a sky heavy with stars, he made his decision. He quietly entered the bedchamber where his wife Yasodhara lay asleep, cradling their infant son Rahula. Love filled his eyes, and yet so did understanding. Whispered a silent goodbye, not out of abandonment, but out of a deeper love, the kind that seeks to liberate all beings from pain. He took one final look, turned away, and with Chana as his guide, rode out of the palace gates. Beyond the walls, destiny waited. And so began Siddhartha's spiritual journey. Not as a prince, but as a seeker. Renunciation leaving the world behind, when they reached a distant forest edge, Siddhartha dismounted. There, he removed his royal robes and jewels. He handed his sword, rings, and ornaments to Chuna, requesting he return them to the king. Chuna pleaded with him to come back, but Siddhartha stood firm. Then, in a symbolic act of deep renunciation, he cut off his hair with a sword. His princely locks fell to the forest floor. The transformation was complete. Siddhartha, the prince, had died. Siddhartha, the seeker, had been born. He put on the robes of a wandering monk, and barefoot alone, he stepped into the unknown. Seeking the path, the forest of teachers, Siddhartha sought out the most respected spiritual teachers of his time. He began with Alara Kalama, a great sage who taught the doctrine of nothingness. Under his guidance, Siddhartha mastered the meditative absorption known as the sphere of nothingness. But when Alara offered him co-leadership of his community, Siddhartha declined. Though he had mastered the technique, he knew in his heart that this was not the final truth. The experience was temporary. When he returned from meditation, suffering remained. He moved on to Udaka Ramaputta, who taught the absorption known as the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. Once again, Siddhartha quickly achieved mastery. And once again, he realized this is not liberation. He thanked his teachers and walked away. Not in disrespect, but in reverence for something deeper his soul still hungered for, the forest of hardship. Embracing austerity after exhausting the limits of philosophical teaching, Siddhartha turned to the practice of extreme asceticism. He reasoned, perhaps the body was the obstacle. Perhaps to conquer suffering, one must first conquer the body itself. He joined 5 other ascetics and plunged into unimaginable austerity. They meditated in the blazing sun and the biting cold. They fasted until their ribs protruded like cage bars around their hearts. Siddhartha consumed a single grain of rice per day. He held his breath until his ears rang. He stood still for hours, locked in silence, his body wasted away. He became a skeleton draped in skin. His eyes sank deep into their sockets. His breath was shallow. He could touch his spine from the front. Yet still, Liberation eluded him. The awakening beneath the Bodhi tree, but not yet one day. Weak and near death, Siddhartha staggered to the banks of the Naranjana River. He attempted to bathe, but collapsed. A village girl named Sujata saw him and, mistaking him for a forest spirit, offered him a bowl of rice milk. Siddhartha accepted it was not weakness that led him to eat. It was wisdom. In that moment, he realized neither luxury nor sin was the path. Truth lies in balance. In the middle way, his 5 ascetic companions, upon seeing him eat, left him in disgust. They believed he had abandoned the path. But Siddhartha now walked a different path, not of punishment or pleasure, but of presence. The 6 years of silence, a deeper journey. In these 6 years, Siddhartha spoke little. He wandered forests, sat by rivers, meditated under trees, and listened. He listened not just with his ears, but with his entire being. He listened to the wind in the trees, to the cry of birds, to the rustle of dry leaves. He watched ants carry food, deer graze, clouds drift, and stars shine. He observed the world not as a prince or a philosopher, but as a mirror reflecting the truth of all things. He saw that nothing stayed the same, that all beings sought happiness, but clung to illusions, that pain arose from desire, that fear came from attachment, and that love, true love, was free of clinging. He learned more from silence than from any sermon, more from a leaf falling than 1,000 words. This was the wisdom of the forest, the voice of the middle path taking root. The middle way, born in stillness, the middle way is not compromise. It is not passivity. It is the path that honors the body without indulging it. It nurtures the soul without punishing it. It moves through the world without becoming tangled in it. Siddhartha, now stronger from Sujata's meal, walked to a tree by the village of Bodhi Gaya. There, beneath a Bodhi tree, he sat. He crossed his legs, rested his hands, and vowed, "I will not rise from this seat until I have found the end of suffering." But that is the next chapter. Reflections in the forest. As you imagine Siddhartha during these 6 years of solitude, you may feel the weight of silence. You may sense the depth of his quest. This was not a man who ran away. This was a man who walked straight into the fire of his questions, who left everything familiar to sit with the unfamiliar, to sit with fear, longing, memory, and silence. What would it mean for you to enter your own forest? Not a literal one, but the forest of the mind, the wilderness of uncertainty. Could you sit? Could you listen? Guided reflection. A moment now. Close your eyes. Inhale. Exhale. Picture yourself alone in a quiet forest. The sun filters through the leaves. The earth is warm beneath you. There is no rush, no distraction, only your breath. Only this moment, feel the weight of your own illusions. The identities you carry, the fears you hide, the dreams you chase. What happens if you let them go? Just for this breath, can you be like Siddhartha? Can you sit quietly in the truth of what is? 6 years of silence, 6 lessons for the soul from these years. Siddhartha carried wisdom not in books, but in being. Truth cannot be inherited. It must be experienced. The body is not the enemy, nor is it the goal. Extremes cloud clarity, balance. Reveals it. Nature is the greatest teacher. Suffering is a doorway, not a wall. Stillness is the ground of awakening. These 6 lessons are etched, not just in history, but in the hearts of all who walk the path of awakening. Chapter 5. The first sermon, turning the wheel of Dharma. Moment of awakening beneath the Bodhi tree did not mark the end of Siddhartha's journey. Rather, it signified a sacred beginning, with the chains of ignorance and delusion broken. Siddhartha, now the Buddha, the awakened one, sat silently, immersed in the vast, serene ocean of enlightenment. He had seen the truth, touched the eternal, and tasted the nectar of liberation. But in the silence that followed, a question echoed. Across the inner chambers of his heart, Should I speak? Should I attempt to share what cannot be grasped with words? He understood the magnitude of the realization. What he had discovered was beyond thought, beyond language, beyond comprehension. The Dharma, this exquisite law of reality, the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to it was subtle, deep, and radiant like the morning star. Would the world, lost in craving and distraction, ever understand? For 7 weeks, the Buddha remained in the vicinity of the Bodhi tree. Each week, he spent in deep contemplation, expressing gratitude to the tree that had sheltered him and reflecting upon the profound dimensions of his enlightenment. It is said that in the second week, he stood gazing at the Bodhi tree without blinking, in sheer reverence and love, a symbol of silent gratitude for the sanctuary it had offered. Yet, the silence could not last forever. One day, the celestial beings of the higher realms, Brahma Sahampati among them, descended before the Buddha. With palms joined, he bowed before the awakened one and pleaded, "O Blessed One, there are those with little dust in their eyes. If the Dharma is not shared, they will be lost. Please turn the wheel of Dharma for the benefit of gods and humans." The Buddha looked upon the worlds, those drowning in ignorance, yet yearning for light and compassion arose within him like a tidal wave. He saw that though many might remain blind, there were some whose hearts were ready. Seeds of truth slumbered within them, waiting only for the right touch to awaken. He nodded gently. The time had come. The journey to Sarnath Buddha recalled 5 companions who had once practiced austerities with him in the forests of Uruvela. Though they had left him when he abandoned self-mortification, the Buddha knew they were sincere seekers, earnest, disciplined, and open-hearted. Perhaps they, among the first, would understand. And so, with deliberate steps, the Buddha made his way to the deer park in Sarnath, near Varanasi. The land was quiet and serene. Birds sang the music of the dawn, and gentle deer grazed beneath the shade of tamarind trees. It was here that spiritual seekers often gathered, far from the noise of society, closer to the whispers of truth. When the 5 ascetics Kandina, Abhidya, Vapamahanama, and Assaja saw the Buddha approaching, they resolved not to pay him respect. "He has returned to comfort," they murmured. He left the path of renunciation. But as the Buddha drew near, something shifted. The way he walked, the way he radiated stillness and presence, like a lotus untouched by the muddy waters. Around it shattered their judgments. One by one, their resolve melted. They stood, greeted him with folded hands, and offered him water and a seat. The Buddha looked at them with love and serenity. "Brothers," he said, "I have found the deathless. I have discovered the middle path that leads to awakening." They listened, skeptical but respectful. "You have practiced extremes," the Buddha said. "I too have walked that road. I have known indulgence, and I have known self-denial leads to peace. The middle way, avoiding both, is the path to liberation." And thus began the turning of the wheel of Dharma. The Dhammacappopavan Sutta, the first teaching, sitting cross-legged, beneath the golden hue of the setting sun. The Buddha delivered his first sermon, the Dhammacappopavan Sutta, setting in motion the wheel of the Dharma, with words that were clear, luminous, and compassionate. He shared the essence of his realization. There are 2 extremes to be avoided by one who has gone forth. One is the pursuit of sensual pleasure, which is low, coarse, and unprofitable. The other is the pursuit of self-mortification, which is painful and unworthy. The middle path, discovered by the Tathagata, avoids both extremes and brings insight, peace, and nibbana. He then unveiled the 4 noble truths. Dukkha, life involves suffering, birth, aging, sickness, death, separation from what we love, union with what we dislike, and the endless craving that never satisfies. Samudaya, the origin of suffering, is craving, thirst, desire that clings to pleasure, existence. and non-existence. Nirvana, the cessation of suffering, is possible by extinguishing this craving. The path to the end of suffering is the Noble Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. As he spoke, the world seemed to pause. The deer in the meadow listened. The wind fell silent. The leaves stood still. Something ancient and sacred had awakened among the five Khandina saw with pure eyes. The veil of ignorance was lifted. He understood not just with intellect, but with the totality of his being that all things which arise are subject to cessation. And in that moment, the Buddha smiled. Khandina has understood, he said. Anasivata bo Khandano. Khandina has indeed understood. The Sangha is born with Khandina's realization. The Sangha, the community of enlightened monks, was born. Over the following days, the Buddha continued to teach, and the other four ascetics too came to understand the truth. He instructed them in the principles of mindfulness, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. Their robes were simple, their bowls empty, but their hearts were full. These men, once lost in the forest of confusion, now stood on the shore of nirvana. News spread like wind through the villages and towns. A great sage had awakened, and he was teaching the path to liberation. From distant lands, they came princes, merchants, paupers, scholars. Some came to debate, others to learn. The Buddha welcomed all, never judging, always pointing inward. Among them came Yasa, a wealthy young man who wandered the forest, disillusioned by his luxurious life. Seeing the serenity of the Buddha, he bowed and asked, "Is there a way out?" Of this suffering, the Buddha responded not with abstract philosophy, but with direct teachings. Yasa too understood, and soon his father and friends followed. One by one, the Sangha grew. The Buddha established a simple order. Robes dyed in ochre, alms collected silently, and daily practice of the Dharma. There were no temples, no rituals, only the quiet commitment to walk the Eightfold Path. Turning the wheel again and again, the wheel had been set in motion, not with force, but with clarity. With every teaching, with every step, the Dharma spread not like wildfire, but like moonlight, soft, silent, and illuminating. The Buddha traveled on foot, visiting villages, cities, and forests. He taught kings and beggars, women and men, ascetics and householders, and in every teaching, he emphasized not blind faith, but direct experience. A hipposeko, he would say, "Come and see." The wheel of Dharma turned with every noble heart that awakened, and as it turned, suffering was eased, confusion dissolved, and lives were transformed. Conclusion: the wheel turns within Youth Buddha's first sermon. At Sarnath was not merely a historical event, it was a cosmic moment, a shift in human consciousness. From that day, the light of wisdom began to outshine the darkness of ignorance. But the wheel the Buddha turned continues to spin in every one of us. Every time we pause and look deeply at our suffering, every time we renounce our craving and choose peace, every time we speak truth, act with compassion, and sit in stillness, we are turning the wheel again. The first sermon was not an end. It was an invitation across centuries, and continents too walk the path of awakening. So ask yourself, where am I clinging? What truth am I avoiding? Can I, too, see the Four Noble Truths not as philosophy, but as lived experience? The Buddha did not demand belief. He asked for inquiry. He did not promise miracles. He offered a path, and with that path, the wheel began to turn, not outside, but within, and perhaps, even now, you feel it turning. Chapter 6. The Way of Zen. Seeing clearly, the sun had risen and set countless times since the Blessed One had delivered his first sermon at Deer Park. The teachings of the Dharma had spread like the light of dawn, subtle at first, barely noticeable to those wrapped in the sleep of ignorance, but inevitable and unstoppable. The Sangha grew as men and women from all walks of life left behind the dust of worldly attachments to follow the Buddha's path. Yet among these teachings, another stream quietly began to form. It was neither separate nor apart, but a clear extension of the original insight, the way of Zen. Or dhyana in Sanskrit, meaning meditation, would become the heart of many future movements, and yet its essence had already been seated in the stillness beneath the Bodhi tree. The clarity with which the Buddha saw the nature of mind, the ephemeral nature of self, and the illusion of permanence would later blossom into what we now know as Zen. In this chapter, we explore this unique unfolding, the way of direct seeing, the art of no mind, and the liberation that comes not through knowledge, but through realization, the seeds of Zen. Silent transmission. When people think of Zen, they often envision serene monks, seated in silence, facing a wall, unmoving for hours. But Zen is not about the posture. It is about presence, and presence was what the Buddha exemplified. There is a story of Mokshyapa, one of the Buddha's chief disciples. During a gathering, the Buddha gave no sermon. He simply held up a single flower. The audience was confused. They waited for words, for parables, for clarity, but the Buddha said nothing. He merely gazed at the flower. Of all the disciples, only Mokshyapa smiled. In that smile, the Buddha saw understanding. No scripture had been spoken, no text recited, and yet something had been transmitted. A silent transmission beyond words and letters. The Buddha then declared, "What can be communicated through words I have taught you. What cannot be communicated I have given to Mokshyapa." This story would become the foundational legend of Zen, a lineage of insight passed not through books, but through awakened presence. Seeing things as they are, without the veil of thought, sitting with the self or no-self Buddha taught meditation not as an escape, but as an entryway. In silence, the mind unfolds. In stillness, illusions are revealed. When Siddhartha had sat under the Bodhi tree, he faced not demons or gods, but his own mind. He watched the restlessness of thought, the pull of desire, the sting of aversion, and then, with unflinching presence, he went beyond them. He saw that the mind, like a monkey, jumps from one branch to another, always searching, always dissatisfied. And so he watched the monkey. He didn't chase it, he didn't suppress it, he simply observed until the monkey grew tired. This way of sitting, simply watching, would become the heart of Zen practice. There is no striving to become enlightened. There is no self to perfect. There is only this moment, raw and unfiltered. Zen would later express this beautifully in paradoxical phrases called koans, designed to break the logical mind. One famous koan asks, "What is your original face before your parents were born?" This isn't a question to be answered. It is a question to stop the mind, to push it beyond duality. And there, in the silence that follows clarity, chopping wood, carrying water, one of the most profound teachings of Zen is its embrace of the ordinary. While some spiritual paths speak of mystical states and divine visions, Zen points to the cup of tea in your hand, the wind rustling the leaves, the sound of your breath as you walk. A disciple once asked a Zen master, "What is enlightenment?" The master replied, "Chop wood, carry water." And after enlightenment, the student pressed, "Chop wood, carry water." There is a great humility in this. Zen reminds us that truth is not hidden in distant heavens. It is here, now. Washing a bowl, sweeping a floor, writing a word. There is no sacred and profane. There is only awareness and its absence. This echoes the Buddha's earliest teachings. He did not tell people to abandon the world, but to see it clearly, to live in it, but not be bound by it. Zen takes this to its purest expression, the sound of one hand clapping one. Of the most poetic and perplexing elements of Zen is its use of paradox to awaken insight. The logic of the ordinary mind is linear, dualistic, but enlightenment is non-dual beyond subject and object. this and that. To train this kind of mind, Zen developed koans like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Does a dog have Buddha nature? When both hands are clapped, sound is produced. Listen to the sound of one hand. These are not riddles to solve, but traps for the conceptual mind. The student wrestles with them not to find an answer, but to exhaust the mind itself. And in that exhaustion, something else breaks through. Direct seeing, the Buddha had said, be a lamp unto yourselves. Zen simply adds, when you realize your true nature, the lamp was never needed. Beyond scriptures, living the Dharma, while other Buddhist traditions preserved the teachings in vast scriptures, thousands of sutras, commentaries, and philosophical treatises. Zen often rebelled against this tendency. A famous saying among Zen practitioners is, do not mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. Words, teachings, even the Buddha's sermons, they are all fingers. Useful, but not the truth itself. Zen warns us not to become scholars of the path, but walkers of it, not collectors of teachings, but embodiments. This doesn't reject the Dharma, it refines it. It returns us to the Buddha's core insight that liberation is not in believing, but in seeing. The practice of not practicing, perhaps, one of the most radical teachings of Zen, is the idea of non-practice. Zen masters speak of wu-wei effortless action, or doing without doing. They say the moment you try to attain enlightenment, you have lost it. This seems absurd. Shouldn't we strive? Shouldn't we work hard, discipline ourselves? Zen says, look closely. Who is striving? Who is trying? Is there a self too perfect? Or is that to another illusion? The Buddha sat not to become a Buddha, but because sitting was true. He did not meditate to achieve something, he meditated to see. And when all striving fell away, what remained was what had always been pure awareness. Zen practice often involves zazen, just sitting, no mantra, no visualization. Just sitting, watching the breath, the thoughts, the self, until even the watcher disappears. Enlightenment is every day. Minda monk once asked Master Joshu, what is enlightenment? The master replied, the ordinary mind is the way. But, should we direct it, toward it, or not? Asked the monk. If you try to direct it, you go against it. The master said, Zen is full of such exchanges, seemingly contradictory, yet pointing to the same truth. Enlightenment is not a peak experience. It is not fireworks. It is the recognition of what is already so, without distortion, without commentary. As the Buddha walked the dusty roads of India, he didn't radiate magic. He was quiet, calm. Awake, people were drawn to him not because of miracles, but because of presence. A presence so still, so clear, that in his reflection, others began to see themselves. Zen honors this. It strips away the non-essential. It returns us to the breath, the bowl, the moment, no self, no mind, no striving, just this. The Bodhi tree inside we often think of the Bodhi tree as a sacred site. Pilgrims travel from far to see it, but Zen reminds us the Bodhi tree is inside. The Mara that tempts us is inside. The stillness that awakens us is inside. There is nowhere to go, nothing to add, nothing to remove. A Zen master once said, when I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep. It sounds simple, but to do it fully, without distraction, without thought, is profound. Zen is not separate from the Buddha's path. It is its distilled essence, not another school, but a mirror held up to the original awakening dot to see clearly, that is, the way of Zen. And so, we end this chapter not with a conclusion, but with a question. What are you doing right now? Are you here? Truly here? Can you hear the sound between the words, the silence behind the noise, the awareness beneath your thoughts? That is Zen. And it is always available. Just look, just be, just this. Chapter 7. Compassion in Action, the Heart of the Buddha After. The wheel of Dharma had turned and the voice of truth had echoed across Deer Park. something remarkable began to take root in the world. The light that had awakened under the Bodhi tree now radiated with an even deeper brilliance, one not merely of insight, but of boundless compassion. For the Buddha, wisdom and compassion were not two separate rivers, but one great stream flowing through the world, nourishing those parched by suffering, confusion, and longing. Let us walk slowly through this path, the path of compassion in action, and witness how the Enlightened One became not just a teacher, but a living embodiment of love without condition. A new dawn of compassion. It is said that the Buddha never rested, not because he was restless, but because his love for all beings burned like a steady flame, silent, tireless, pure. He would walk for miles barefoot through scorching plains and cool forests, not for pleasure or escape, but to reach even a single suffering soul. One morning, after meditating beneath the shade of a banyan tree, a disciple asked him, "Master, why do you not remain in solitude now that you are awakened?" The Buddha gently smiled and replied, "How can I enjoy peace when so many remain in chains?" This was not just a statement, it was a vow. The Buddha had tasted nirvana, the unconditioned state beyond sorrow, but instead of withdrawing into it, he returned to the world to guide, to teach, and to love. Stories of boundless compassion. His compassion was not abstract. It was living, breathing, and endlessly patient. One of the most moving stories is that of Angulimala, the fearsome bandit who had murdered hundreds. His very name evoked terror. Yet when he met the Buddha, something stirred within him. The Enlightened One stood before him without fear. Weapon? No anger, just an unwavering presence. "Stop!" cried Angulimala, brandishing his blade. "I must complete my final kill." "I have stopped long ago," said the Buddha. "It is you who have not stopped." Those words pierced more deeply than any sword. Angulimala collapsed, weeping. And there, in the dust of a forest path, the murderer became a monk. Not through punishment, not through exile, but through compassion. The Buddha's heart knew no boundaries. Whether it was a courtesan longing for dignity, a grieving mother clutching her lifeless child, or a king drowning in pride, he met them all where they were, with eyes that saw their pain and a voice that reminded them of their worth, teaching through action. The Buddha taught with silence as much as with speech. When a woman named Kisagotami came to him, her arms wrapped around her dead son, begging him to bring the child back to life. He did not reject her grief or give her empty words. He said gently, "Bring me a mustard seed from a house where no one has died." She searched every home in the village, but every family had known death. At last, she understood the universality of loss, and in that understanding, her grief transformed into insight. This was the Buddha's way, using life itself as the sutra, and compassion as the thread that sews it all together. The embrace of all beings. To walk with the Buddha was to walk with someone who saw no difference between the high and the low, the noble and the fallen. To him, a farmer and a prince were no different under the great sky of Dharma. All beings were deserving of freedom. He even taught that animals, trees, and insects were part of the same sacred web of existence. Once, when a monk burned grass during a ritual, the Buddha intervened. "They too seek life," he said softly. "We must harm none." It was not just sentimentality, it was clarity. To see reality clearly was to see that harming others is ultimately harming oneself. Compassion as a daily practice, the Buddha did not want to be worshipped. He wanted people to understand compassion as a daily, deliberate practice. He taught his monks to beg not just for survival, but to maintain humility. He urged them to eat mindfully, speak truthfully, and walk barefoot so they could feel the earth and remember their connection to it. He instructed his followers to serve the sick first, even before meditation. "He who tends to the ill tends to me," he said. In those words, He showed that the true measure of spiritual maturity is not how long you can meditate or how deeply you can recite sutras, but how much love you bring to the simplest moments. The softest touch in a harsh worlding, an age of empires, conquest, and caste. The Buddha's compassion was radical. He included women in his Sangha, gave voice to the voiceless, and honored the untouchables. To him, the Brahmin was not greater than the servant. He saw only one caste, the caste of suffering, and one path, the path to its end. His kindness was not loud. It was the softness of dew before sunrise, the hush of wind through bamboo groves, the stillness of moonlight on a sleeping village. Yet that gentleness shook the foundations of society. The Bodhisattva, ideal the Buddha, planted the seed of the Bodhisattva, the being who vows not to enter final nirvana until all beings are free. While the historical Buddha eventually passed into parinirvana, his teachings inspired countless others to take up this vow. In the Mahayana tradition, this ideal grew like a great tree rooted in the Buddha's own life. For what else was his entire journey but an act of supreme bodhisattvahood? Even in his final days, weakened and near death, he comforted his grieving disciples, saying, "All things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence." His final gift was not a miracle. It was a mirror reflecting the compassion within each of us. Reflections for the modern seeker in our time. We may not wear robes or walk barefoot through forest paths, but the Buddha's compassion remains alive in how we treat each other, in how we speak with kindness to a stranger, in how we listen without judgment, in how we care for our planet. Each act of love, no matter how small, is a continuation of his journey. So pause, dear listener, breathe. Let this truth settle within you. You do not need to be perfect to love. You do not need to have all the answers to help. You only need to see the suffering around you and let your heart respond. The Buddha's way is not a distant ideal. It is the warm meal you share, the forgiveness you offer, the patience you extend. That is the Dharma. That is enlightenment in action. And that is the heart of the Buddha. Chapter 8. The final teaching. The last breath is. The moon waxed full, and the quiet night fell over the ancient forests of Kuchinagar. A sense of stillness spread through the trees. It was not an ordinary stillness, but the kind that comes before a moment destined to echo through eternity. The Buddha, now aged and fragile, had come to the final leg of his life's journey. But even in his weakening body, the strength of his compassion, wisdom, and serenity burned brighter than ever. His final days were not marked by fear or regret, but by clarity, presence. And teaching his last breath, like his first word, was a lesson to all. The last journey begins after decades of teaching and walking through villages, forests, and cities. The Blessed One sensed that his time in the physical form was nearing its end, yet he did not retreat into solitude. He continued to travel with his disciples, offering guidance, answering questions, and blessing those who crossed his path. He had become the embodiment of the Dhamma itself. In his last journey from Rajir to Kushinagar, the Buddha stopped at several places. In Pava, he accepted a meal offered by a blacksmith named Kunda. After the meal, he fell seriously ill, but continued onward. As he walked, leaning on his staff and supported by Ananda, his faithful attendant, he showed no attachment to the pain, nor resistance to what was unfolding. His every step was a teaching in equanimity. Upon arriving in Kushinagar, the Buddha lay down between two sal trees. Miraculously, the trees bloomed out of season, showering white petals upon him, as if the very earth mourned his departure. His disciples gathered around him, many silently weeping, but the Buddha's voice, calm and composed, rose above the sorrow. "Do not grieve, dear ones," he said. "Everything that arises must pass away. This body is not mine, nor yours. It is the law of nature." The final questions. As the night deepened, a monk named Sabhata approached. Ananda, protective of the Buddha's dwindling strength, tried to stop him, but the Buddha, with kindness, said, let him come. Siddhartha sat before the Enlightened One and asked his questions, not out of doubt, but out of sincere longing for truth. The Buddha, even with death close at hand, spoke with clarity, offering one final teaching in any path. If the Eightfold Way is practiced rightly, it leads to liberation. Wherever there is discipline, mindfulness, and true insight, there is the holy life. Siddhartha, moved by the words, became the last disciple to be ordained by the Buddha. Thus, the final teaching was not one of mystery, but of accessibility. The path is open to all who truly walk it. Instructions to the Sanghatha Buddha then turned to the community of monks and nuns. He did not name a successor, for he had always taught that each must be a light unto themselves. He said, "After I am gone, let the Dhamma and the Vinaya be your teacher." He spoke of impermanence again. "Behold now, monks, I exhort you. All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence." These were his last words, a final nudge. To walk the path with courage and perseverance, Ananda, unable to hold back his tears, stepped away to weep. The Buddha, seeing this, called him gently and reminded him, "Have I not told you, Ananda, that everything we hold dear will one day part from us?" But he also praised Ananda's devotion and love, saying that his faithful service would lead him to liberation. Soon the great passing Mahaparinirvanas, the full moon, reached its zenith in the sky. The Buddha closed his eyes, his breathing slowed. A profound silence enveloped the gathering. And then, with a breath so gentle it could be mistaken for a sigh, the Tathagata entered parinirvana. There was no cry of despair from the heavens, nor was there any storm, only stillness. The kind of stillness that arises when the wind stops and the ocean becomes glass. The earth had lost a form, but gained a truth. The disciples sat in silence. Even the most advanced among them could not speak for a while, but slowly, something awakened in them. A fire of determination, a commitment to carry forward the teachings. The light of the Buddha would not go out with his body, would now live in the hearts of all those who understood his message. The cremation and relics the body of the Buddha was honored as that of a universal teacher. Kings and monks alike came to Kushinagar to pay their respects. A funeral pyre was built, and the body was cremated with reverence. From the ashes, relics were collected. These were later distributed and enshrined in stupas across the land. The Buddha had always reminded his disciples, "He who sees the Dhamma sees me." The true relics were not the bones nor the ashes, but the truths he left behind. The final reflection, a teaching beyond words. In death, as in life, the Buddha was a teacher. He demonstrated how to meet the end without fear, clinging, or regret. His last breath was a mirror to his first step on the path, guided by insight, motivated by compassion, and free from illusion. For those who listen deeply, the final chapter of the Buddha's life offers one last precious teaching. Let go. Let go of the idea that we are permanent. Let go of the belief that peace lies outside of ourselves. Let go of sorrow, anger, pride, and fear. Let go of the need to hold on. And in that letting go, discover the truth. There is a place beyond coming and going, beyond birth and death, beyond even the self. That place is not far. It is here, in this breath, this moment, this awareness. Thus ends the earthly journey of the Buddha. But his light continues to shine for all who seek truth, for all who practice with sincerity, and for all who choose love over hatred, mindfulness over distraction, and compassion over judgment. Chapter 9. Walking the path, your inner Buddha, the soft whisper of wind through bamboo groves. The rhythmic breath of your body as it rises and falls, the subtle awareness that dawns in a quiet moment between thoughts. This is where your journey begins. Not in a distant monastery, not under an ancient tree, but here within you. In truth, that is where it begins for us. For the moment Siddhartha Gautama attained nirvana, he became a mirror, a reflection of what we all carry within us. His life was not about escaping the world, but understanding it, loving it, and living in it with eyes wide open. That too is your invitation. You are not being asked to leave your home, abandon your family, or reject the modern world. No, the path of awakening lies precisely where you are. The crowded subway, the hum of traffic, the gaze of a stranger, the silence in your room, each is a doorway. The Buddha's final teaching was not just a farewell, it was a call to walk the path yourself. Awakening in the everyday there is a popular image of enlightenment as a sudden flash, a lightning strike of wisdom. But most often, it arrives like the dawn. Slowly, quietly, the sky gradually lightens. And suddenly you realize the stars have faded. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, patience over anger, compassion over judgment, you are walking the path. You are becoming the witness, the seer, the silent observer behind the chaos of thought. This too is the Buddha within. Take, for example, the act of washing dishes. In Zen, this is sacred. Why? Because if done with full presence, it becomes a meditation. The warmth of the water, the texture of the soap, the clinking of plates. This is life, here and now. You may never shave your head or take vows. But within you, not one who renounces the world, but one who renounces illusion. The illusion that happiness lies somewhere else. That peace is a destination to reach. Your inner monk watches your thoughts without clinging, feels emotions without drowning, listens deeply without needing to speak. This monk is not separate from you. It is you in your most awakened state. Imagine going through a day like this. You wake with gratitude. You walk with awareness. You speak with kindness. You eat with reverence. You eat with reverence. You listen with your whole heart. You rest in silence. This is not fantasy. It is a possibility. The Four Noble Truths revisited, Devon. As you walk this modern life, the teachings of the Buddha remain your compass. Life contains suffering. But suffering is not a punishment, it is a teacher. Your pain is a doorway. Instead of turning away, sit with it. What is it asking of you? The cause of suffering is craving. Notice how often your mind says, if only, ... if only I had that job, that partner, that recognition. Liberation begins when you stop chasing and start noticing. There is a way out of suffering. It is not found in controlling life, but in changing your relationship with it. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming spacious enough to hold both joy and sorrow. The path is the Eightfold Way. Right view, see clearly. Right intention, choose love over fear. Right speech, speak truthfully and kindly. Right action, act with integrity. Right livelihood, work in ways that nourish, not harm. Right effort, persist with gentleness. Right mindfulness, pay attention. Right concentration, find stillness in the storm. You are the path of Buddha never wanted worshippers. He wanted people to wake up, not to follow him, but to follow themselves, deeply, inwardly. You are not broken. You are not lacking. You are not separate from the sacred. Inside you is the same stillness that the Buddha found under the Bodhi tree, the same capacity for boundless compassion, the same flame of insight. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for the chaos to calm. Begin now. Practices to awaken the inner Buddha here are gentle ways to start. Living your truth, silent sitting meditation. Just 5 minutes a day. Sit, breathe, watch. No need to stop your thoughts. Simply return to your breath. Mindful walking as you move. Feel your feet touch the earth. Sync your steps with your breath. The world slows down, compassion breaks. In moments of stress, pause and ask, what would compassion look like right now for myself and others? Sacred listening. When someone speaks, be there fully. Drop your agenda. Listen to understand, not to respond. Gratitude journal. Each night, write 3 things you're grateful for. This shifts your lens from lack to abundance. Digital. Mindfulness. Choose 1 hour a day to unplug. Let your mind breathe. Let silence speak. The world needs your light. We live in times of distraction, division, and despair. But that makes your awakening even more urgent. When you begin to live with presence, your energy changes. And when your energy changes, the world feels it. The child you smile at, the colleague you forgive, the stranger you hold the door for. Each moment of mindfulness is a pebble dropped in the pond. The ripples are real. The Buddha once said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." You are that lamp. Your life is the flame. The journey ahead, walking the path, does not mean you won't stumble. You will. Everyone does. But each time you fall and rise again with awareness, you grow. Each time you return to your breath, you return to yourself. Is no final destination, no certificate of enlightenment. Only deeper layers of seeing, feeling, and being. The Buddha's journey ended with peace. Yours continues with purpose. You are not merely a follower of the path. You are the path, and the world is waiting for you to walk it. Final words: this is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a more conscious one. So close your eyes, breathe, and take your first step, not toward the world, but toward yourself, toward your inner Buddha. He has always been waiting. Chapter 10. Closing meditation, a bow to the present moment. We arrive at the final chapter of our journey, a sacred space where words fade and presence speaks. This is not an ending, but a beginning. Meditation, you are invited not just to reflect on the path, but to be the path. To bow not to some distant God or lofty ideal, but to this very breath, this very moment, this very life. Close your eyes. Let the layers of thought, expectation, striving, and identity begin to dissolve. As if each were a leaf gently falling from the tree of who you thought you had to be. Take a deep breath in and exhale slowly again, ... And again, ... Feel the breath, not just as air, but as a sacred offering, a bridge between the body and the cosmos, a silent bow to the present moment. Let go of trying. There is nowhere to get to, nothing to fix, no self to perfect, no thought to hold ... Just sit. Let the silence hold you like a mother holds a newborn. Feel your body as it is, the rise and fall of your chest, the softness in your shoulders, the stillness of your hands, the weight of your presence. Can you feel it? You are not a concept, not an identity, not a name or a history. You are awareness itself, the space in which all things arise and fall. Let the river of thoughts pass. Let each one come like a whisper and go like a breeze. No judgment, no control. Only witnessing. This is the heart of the Buddha's final teaching. To abide in presence. To rest in the reality before labels, before language, before comparison. To wake up, not to some special state, but to the ordinary miracle of now. Pause here for 10 seconds of silence. In these quiet minutes, imagine yourself sitting beneath the Bodhi tree, not as a seeker, but as one who remembers, one who no longer grasps for answers, but who bows to the mystery itself. You do not need enlightenment. You are enlightenment. It only waits for you to recognize its reflection in your own still eyes. All the teachings, all the sutras, all the masters, they point to this. Not to more effort, but to surrender. Not to more doing, but deeper being. To bow to the present moment is to recognize that nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be taken away. You are whole. You are sacred. Bring your attention gently to your heart, not as a muscle, but as a center of radiant presence. Feel the warmth there, perhaps a pulse, a glow, a subtle rhythm that says, "I am alive. I am here." Let your breath move in and out of your heart space. With each breath, offer gratitude. Gratitude for your life, for the lessons, for the pain that shaped you, for the joy that lifted you, for the quiet moments in between, and most of all, gratitude for this breath, this awareness, this now. POC now. Imagine this light in your heart expanding, growing gently with each breath. It fills your chest, your arms, your face, your entire body. It overflows beyond your skin. Into the room, into the world, you become the Bodhi tree. Your spine, its trunk, your breath, its leaves, your heart, its roots. The whole universe bows with you. Breathe and let go. There is no goal, no destination. Only this step, this breath, this moment. And that is enough. 10-second pause, thoughts return, welcome them. Then gently return to the breath, like a child returning home after play. No scolding, no blame, just return. Let this become your way, not just in meditation, but in life, to return again and again. To now. Because peace was never in the future. Love was never somewhere else. Freedom was never outside you. It is all here. Inhale, exhale, Bodhi, and when you are ready, bring your palms together at your heart. Feel their warmth. Bow your head gently, not in submission, but in reverence. Reverence for the path, for the mystery, for the unshakable truth that you are not lost, broken, or lacking. You are the light that sees, the silence that listens, the awareness that holds it all. One last breath. Inhale, exhale, bow to the present moment. And as you do, know that in this bow, you are free. In the stillness of the Himalayan foothills, where the morning mists kiss the earth and the skies whisper the secrets of eternity, a moment was unfolding, one that would change the world forever. This is not just the story of a prince. This is the beginning of awakening, of truth, of freedom from suffering. This is the birth of Siddhartha Gautama, the one who would one day become the Buddha. Scene 1, the kingdom of Kapilavastu more than 2,600 years ago. Nestled in the lap of the majestic Himalayas stood a small but prosperous kingdom, Kapilavastu. It was a realm of peace and dignity ruled by the noble king Hudodana, leader of the Shakya clan. The people of the kingdom were hardworking, spiritual, and loyal. They revered nature, worshipped the cycles of life, and believed deeply in karma, the law of cause and effect. But even amidst this tranquil prosperity, there was one longing that remained in the heart of the king and queen. They had no child. Every day, Queen Maya would visit temples and make offerings to the gods. Her heart carried a silent prayer, a wish to hold a child, to nurture life within her, to become a mother. And then, one night, the universe answered. Scene 2, the dream of Queen Mayan, the night of the full moon. Queen Maya had a dream. In her vision, she saw a radiant white elephant descending from the heavens, carrying in its trunk a lotus flower. The elephant circled her 3 times, gently touched her right side, and entered her womb. The queen awoke feeling calm, blessed, and filled with divine energy. She knew something sacred had taken place. The dream was interpreted by Brahmins and sages. All of them bowed with reverence, declaring, "O Queen, you carry within you a great soul, no ordinary child. He will become either a great monarch who unites all of India, or a spiritual teacher who will liberate the world from suffering." Scene 3, birth in Lumbini Gardens. Per tradition, Queen Maya began her journey to her parental home for the delivery. But along the way, in the beautiful Lumbini garden, filled with blooming sal trees and singing birds, the queen paused to rest. There, under the shade of a flowering tree, leaning gently on a branch, she gave birth not in pain, but in peace. According to legend, Siddhartha was born standing upright, took 7 steps in each direction, and declared with a voice as clear as thunder, "I am the foremost. This is my final birth. I am here to end all suffering." As he stepped, lotus flowers bloomed beneath his feet. It was not an ordinary birth, it was an awakening into the world. The earth trembled, the skies poured divine rain, heaven and earth rejoiced, and in that divine moment, a prince was born, but not just for a kingdom. He was born for the entire world, seen for celebration and prophecy back in Kapilavastu. Joy erupted. The people danced. The palace was adorned with silk and flowers, and every home lit lamps of celebration. Siddhartha's name was chosen with care. It means one who achieves his goal. 8 wise Brahmins were invited to the naming ceremony. 7 of them raised their hands in reverence and said, "He will become a Chakravartya universal monarch." But the youngest, sage Asita, a renunciate known for his vision, began to weep. The court grew silent. "Why do you cry, O sage?" the king asked. Asita replied, "I weep, not in sorrow, but in joy. This child will become a Buddhanan, enlightened one. He will show the path beyond suffering. I only cry because I will not live long enough to hear his teachings, even as a newborn." Siddhartha's presence brought silence to the hearts of saints and strength to the hearts of the suffering. Scene 5. A childhood of luxury King Hudodana, deeply moved by the prophecy, feared losing his son to a spiritual path. He wanted Siddhartha to be a ruler, not a monk. He built 3 palaces for him for summer, monsoon, and winter, each filled with pleasure. Music, gardens, dancers, and luxury beyond imagination. Siddhartha was never shown pain, never saw sickness, never witnessed death. The king commanded, "Let my son never know suffering, surround him with beauty, protect his innocence." He was educated by the best teachers, trained in martial arts, poetry, philosophy, and politics. Siddhartha excelled. In every discipline, he was kind, gentle, wise beyond his years, and yet a quiet longing remained in his eyes. Even in laughter, he seemed to listen to something deeper. Even in joy, there was stillness within him. Even in his comfort, his soul seemed to whisper, "This is not all there is." Scene 6. Marriage to Princess Yashodhara. Siddhartha came of age. His father arranged a grand Swayamvara ceremony, where noblemen competed for the hand of a princess. Siddhartha.com and composed. Won every challenge with great strength, knowledge, archery, horse riding, debate. He married the beautiful and kind-hearted Princess Yashodhara, and their union was one of love and respect. The people rejoiced again, believing the prince's destiny was sealed. A family, a kingdom, a future of power. But destiny had its own rhythm. Within the palace walls, a storm was slowly brewing, not one of destruction, but of awakening. Scene 7. Signs of a deeper calling in the midst of celebration and luxury. Siddhartha began to question life. He would sit in the gardens, gazing at falling leaves, the setting sun, and ask, "Why must everything change? Why must joy be temporary? Why does the heart long for something it cannot name?" His eyes, once content with palace pleasures, now sought something beyond. He longed not for gold or glory, but for truth. And so the journey inward had already begun silently, gently, in the cradle of kingship. The seed of enlightenment had been planted. Narrator, gentle closing voice. A prince was born not to conquer the world with weapons, but to conquer himself. Not to rule over land, but to rule over suffering. This is only the beginning. In the next chapter, Siddhartha will take a journey beyond the palace walls, a journey that will shatter his illusions and open the doors to truth. But for now, we honor this moment. The moment when the universe gifted the world a child of light. Prince, who would one day become the Buddha. Sometimes the truth is not taught, it is seen. And in a single moment of seeing, a life changes, a destiny unfolds, a soul awakens. This is the story of such a transformation. A prince who had everything, but was blind to one thing, the truth of life. This is chapter 2 in the journey of Siddhartha, the moment when illusion begins to crack and light enters the heart. This is the four sights. Scene 1. The palace walls prince, Siddhartha Gautama, now a young man, lived surrounded by comfort, music, beauty, and knowledge. 3 magnificent palaces kept him protected through summer, monsoon, and winter. Servants fulfilled every need. Musicians played melodies that danced through the marble halls. The king Hudodana had done everything to shield his son from pain. No sickness, no old age, no suffering was allowed near the palace. It was not just protection, it was control, a carefully curated world, an illusion of permanence. But truth, like sunlight, always finds its way through the smallest cracks. And for Siddhartha, the yearning had begun. A quiet restlessness stirred in his soul. Scene 2, a desire to see the world one morning, Siddhartha sat beneath a rose tree in the palace garden. He watched a leaf detach from a branch and slowly drift to the ground. He stared at it for a long time and whispered, "Why do things fall? Why does beauty fade? What lies beyond these walls?" He turned to his charioteer, the loyal Channa, and said, "Take me outside the palace. I want to see the world, not stories, but reality." Channa hesitated. The king had forbidden it. But something in Siddhartha's voice was different, firm, deep, inevitable. With a heavy heart, Channa readied the royal chariot, and thus began the prince's first journey beyond the palace gates. Scene 3. The first sight, old age as they moved through the streets. Siddhartha's eyes lit up with wonder. He saw ordinary people, merchants, potters, farmers, children running barefoot. He smiled at the innocence of life. But then, he saw something that made him freeze. A man, frail and hunched, his back bent, hands trembling, skin wrinkled like dried leaves. He walked slowly, leaning on a stick. Every step a struggle. Siddhartha was confused. What's wrong with him? Channa, why does he walk like that? Why is his body shaking? Channa answered gently, "He is old, my lord. This is what age does to the body." Siddhartha's eyes widened. Does it happen to everyone? Will I grow old? Will my son? Channa nodded silently. The world spun. For the first time, Siddhartha saw a truth that could not be escaped. No matter how rich, how royal, how powerful age comes for all. The palace walls had hidden it, but outside, reality ruled. Scene 4. The second sight. Sickness, they continued riding in silence. The prince's mind was racing. But soon, they passed by another sight. A man lying on the ground, moaning in pain, his face pale, his body covered in sweat. People stood around him helplessly. Siddhartha rushed forward. "What's wrong with him? Why does he suffer like this?" Channa replied, "He is sick, my lord. Disease has taken hold of his body." Heart pounded. Can this happen to anyone? Even to someone like me? Again, Channa nodded. Illness unpredictable, uninvited, unavoidable. A quiet fear entered Siddhartha's heart knot, the fear of death. But the fear of ignorance, the fear of not knowing what life truly was. Why did no one tell me? Why did no one prepare me? The world, once so full of joy, now seemed fragile, fleeting. Scene 5. The third sight, Death the prince asked. To see more, he needed to understand. As they rode further, they saw a procession somber and slow. Men in white carried a lifeless body on a wooden platform. Mourners followed, weeping. The air was heavy with grief. Siddhartha whispered, "Why does that man lie so still? Why are they crying?" Channa replied softly, "He is dead, my lord. His life has ended. This is the final fate of all who are born." Siddhartha's breath caught. "Dead, you mean? This body will one day stop breathing, stop moving." Channa nodded. And in that moment, a great silence fell over Siddhartha's mind. Not sadness, not panic, but a deep, piercing realization. All beings grow old. All beings fall sick. All beings die. This is the nature of life. And yet, No one speaks of it. No one prepares for it. Everyone lives as if the illusion will last forever. Scene 6. The fourth sight, the asceticas, the chariot turned back toward the palace. The prince saw a man unlike any he had seen before. He wore simple robes, his head was shaved, he walked barefoot with a bowl in hand, yet there was a peace in his deep inner light. Siddhartha asked, "Who is he? Why does he look so calm?" "When the world is full of suffering," Channa replied, "he is an ascetic. He has left his home and comforts to seek the truth, to understand suffering, and find freedom from it." Siddhartha stared long and hard. Here was a man who had nothing, yet radiated more peace than any prince. No palace, no riches, no pleasures, just a path, a purpose, a search for the truth behind life. Something stirred deep within Siddhartha's soul. He realized that life was not what it seemed, then that freedom would never be found in wealth, power, or pleasure. It was hidden in the quiet, simple path of the seeker. Scene 7. Return to the palace. Siddhartha returned to the palace, but he was no longer the same. The flowers in the garden no longer delighted him. The music seemed hollow. The silks felt heavy on his skin. He looked at his wife Yashodhara, pregnant with their child, and felt both love and sorrow. "What world are we bringing this child into?" he thought. His heart was full of questions and a deep longing for truth. He had seen the four sights: old age, the decay of the body; sickness, the vulnerability of life; death, the finality of all things. A seeker, the path to understanding. He knew now this world is impermanent. Everything we love, everything we hold on to, will fade. But maybe, just maybe, there is a path beyond the illusion. Scene 8. Awakening within that night. As the palace slept, Siddhartha sat by the window and gazed at the moon. Its soft light bathed the world in silver silence, and he whispered, "There must be a way out of this cycle of birth, decay, and death. There must be a truth beyond pleasure and pain. I must find it not just for me, but for all who suffer." And with that thought, the seed of renunciation was planted. The prince had seen the world not with eyes of judgment, but with the eyes of wisdom. He had not just looked, he had seen. And in that seeing, he had taken his first step toward becoming the Buddha. The four sights were not accidents. They were mirrors. They were messengers. They were a awakenist. And now the journey was no longer about comfort. It was about truth. In the next chapter, Siddhartha will make the most painful and powerful decision of his life, to leave behind the world he knew. In search of the truth that calls from beyond, this is only the beginning. When a man walks away from everything, his crown, his kingdom, his wife, his newborn son, what is he seeking? Not gold, not glory, not gods, but something deeper, something unshakable. Truth. This is the story of 6 silent years. 6 years of wandering, 6 years of hunger, 6 years of questions without answers. This is the path walked by Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who gave up a palace to search for freedom from suffering. This is chapter 3, 6 years of seeking. Scene 1. The great departure. It was a quiet night. The moon bathed the city of Kapilavastu in silver. Everyone was asleep, except one man, Prince Siddhartha, standing by the bedside of his wife, Yashodhara, and newborn son Rahula, watched silently. His heart ached. He loved them, but he also knew if he didn't leave now, he never would. He whispered softly, "This bond of love is also a chain. I must break it, not because I don't love you, but because I do." With one last glance, Siddhartha walked into the stillness. His loyal charioteer Channa waited at the gates, and together they rode silently into the darkness. At the edge of the forest, Siddhartha removed his jewelry, his royal robes, and with his sword cut off his long, beautiful hair. He handed everything to Channa and said, "Tell my father I have not left to abandon life. I have left to understand it, and thus barefoot and alone, he entered the wilderness, not as a prince, but as a seeker of truth. Scene 2. The forest Pathan, the forests of ancient India. Siddhartha wandered from village to village, from monastery to monastery, asking a single question. Why do we suffer? Why does the mind cling, fear, burn? Is there a way out? He met scholars, yogis, sages. Some preached rituals, others debated scriptures. Some spoke of heaven, others of punishment, but nothing brought peace. Nothing ended the storm within, he realized. Knowledge alone cannot free the mind. It must be lived, it must be felt, it must be experienced. And so Siddhartha chose to go deeper, not into books, but into himself. Scene 3. The teachers, Alara and Uddakane, his travels. Siddhartha came across two renowned masters. The first was Alara Kalama, a deep meditator who taught the state of nothingness, a realm beyond thought, beyond desire. Siddhartha mastered the practice quickly. He reached the same meditative absorption as his teacher. Alara offered him co-leadership of his school, but Siddhartha declined. This is deep, but not the end. The mind returns. Suffering returns. He moved on and found Uddaka Ramaputta, who taught the state of neither perception nor non-perception, the subtlest state of consciousness. Again, Siddhartha mastered it. Again, he was offered a place of honor, and again he refused. Even this is not permanent. I seek something unchanging. He bowed with gratitude and continued on alone. Scene 4. The path of self-mortifications. Still hungry for truth, Siddhartha went to the forests of Urovela, where many ascetics lived. Here he encountered the belief that the body was the enemy, that starving it, punishing it, denying it would bring freedom. So he joined them. He ate just a grain of rice a day. He stopped bathing. He held his breath until his ears rang. He stood in the sun until his skin cracked. He sat motionless in winter winds until his body turned blue. He wasted away. His bones pressed against his skin. His eyes sank. His once strong body became a skeleton wrapped in skin. But still truth did not come. One day he tried to touch his stomach and fell unconscious. When he awoke, a quiet voice rose within. This is not the way. Scene 5. The realization under the tree dragged himself to a nearby river. He bent to drink, but fell. A young woman named Sujata, thinking he was a forest spirit, offered him a bowl of rice milk. At first, he hesitated. To eat was to break his vow, but something inside him stirred. How can a broken instrument produce the music of truth? He accepted the food. His strength returned slowly. He washed himself in the river and sat beneath a tree, watching the sun reflect on the water. And then, a thought bloomed in his mind. In my youth, I sat under a rose apple tree, watching the plow in the field. I entered a natural state of peace, not forced, not denied, just being. That was the path, neither indulgence nor denial, but balance, the middle way, not too tight, not too loose. Like the strings of a lute, this was the way forward. Scene 6. The abandonment, when the 5 ascetics who practiced with Siddhartha saw him eat and regain strength. They were shocked. They believed he had failed. They left him, but Siddhartha was not shaken. He realized truth must be walked alone. Not for praise, not for followers, but for freedom. He made a vow. Let my flesh dry up, my bones turn to dust. But I will not rise from this seat until I find the truth. He sat under the Bodhi tree. In deep meditation, the world grew silent, the birds stilled, the earth waited. Scene 7. Reflections in the silences. He meditated. Old fears rose within him, memories, desires, doubts, illusions. The mind screamed for comfort. But Siddhartha watched it all come clear. Unmoving, he realized. Suffering is not outside. It is in the mind. It is in craving. It is in ignorance. He saw lifetimes unfold before him. Birth, death, rebirth. He saw the endless cycle samsara. And then he saw the cause, attachment, clinging, ego. He saw the cure, letting go, awareness, compassion. And finally, as the morning star rose on the 49th day, he awakened, scene 8, the end of seeking at the age of 35. Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha, the awakened. He was no longer searching. He had arrived. No gods had whispered secrets. No scriptures had revealed truth. He had discovered it by looking within, not in the sky, not in the stars, but in the stillness of the heart. For 6 years, he wandered the forests, fought with his own mind, tasted hunger, loneliness, and despair. But in the fire of that suffering, he found something unshakable, not belief, not ritual, but a path, one that others could walk. This is the story of seeking, of never giving up, of trusting the voice within. In the next chapter, the Buddha will rise not as a seeker, but as a teacher, the one who turns back to light the path for others. This was only the silence before the song. There comes a moment in every seeker's life when the questions grow quiet, when the mind stops reaching, and the heart whispers, "Sit, stay, be still." It was under one such tree, more than 2,600 years ago, that a prince-turned-seeker closed his eyes not to escape the world, but to truly see it. This is the story of awakening, of the final test, the final surrender, and the birth of a Buddha. This is chapter 4. Beneath the Bodhi tree, scene 1, a sacred vow in the quiet grove of Uruvela, where the river Nara flowed gently and the air was thick with stillness. Siddhartha Gautama approached a majestic fig tree. Its branches stretched wide like open arms. Its roots burrowed deep into the earth, firm, unmoving. Its leaves shimmered in the sunlight. Here Siddhartha sat. He had tried the extremes. He had fasted till near death. He had mastered the finest meditative states. He had wandered through knowledge, tradition, and silence. And now he sat, not as a prince, not as a philosopher, not as a man looking outward, but as a soul looking inward. He crossed his legs into the lotus posture. He rested his hands gently in his lap. He closed his eyes, and he whispered a vow that echoed through the universe. "Let my flesh wither, let my bones turn to dust. But until I see the truth, until I attain awakening, I will not rise from this seat." Scene 2. Of the mind, Mara's arrival as Siddhartha sank deeper into meditation. The earth grew quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. And in that silence came Mara, not a demon of fire and horns, but the embodiment of illusion, temptation, ego, and fear. Mara saw what Siddhartha was about to do and grew desperate. If this man awakens, he will break the cycle of suffering for millions. He will shine a light too bright for darkness to survive. Mara summoned his forces. His first attack was desire. He sent his daughter Stanha craving, Arati aversion, and Raga attachment to dance before Siddhartha. They shimmered like gold, whispered promises of pleasure, love, power. But Siddhartha did not move. He saw them not as temptresses, but as passing clouds, impermanent, empty, without power over his calm. Next, Mara sent fear. He unleashed storms, thunder, monsters from the depths of nightmare. The ground trembled. The skies cracked. Still Siddhartha sat. Unshaken. Then came the subtlest attack. Doubt. Mara leaned close and hissed, "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to seek awakening? What makes you think you're worthy?" And Siddhartha, with eyes still closed, reached his hand to touch the earth. Scene 3. The earth as witness it was a simple gesture. But it shook the heavens. Fingers pressed into soil, into the very body of Mother Earth. And the earth responded with a low, sacred rumble. She spoke not in words, but in knowing. The trees swayed gently. The animals stilled. The winds whispered truth. The earth bore witness to every sacrifice Siddhartha had made, every lifetime of compassion, every moment of selfless giving. She said, without saying, "He is worthy." Mara fell silent. His illusions had failed. He and his army vanished like mist before the morning sun. The battle was over, but the journey was just beginning. Scene 4. The deepening meditation now alone. Siddhartha turned inward deeper than ever before. The breath slowed, the mind grew still, and through the layers of thought, memory, and identity, he began to see. He saw the past lives he had lived, countless births, deaths, and rebirths across infinite time. He saw the lives of all beings, how they rise and fall, suffer and hope, love and lose, and he saw the chain that binds them, ignorance, craving, clinging, suffering, rebirth. But he didn't stop there. As the night deepened into midnight, he turned his gaze toward the heart of reality, and he saw the four noble truths rise like the morning star. There is suffering, pain, loss, dissatisfaction woven into all existence. There is a cause, craving, ignorance, attachment. There is a way out. Freedom is possible. There is a path, the noble eightfold path of right living, right thinking, and right awareness. Scene 5. The moment of enlightenment, as the last star began to fade and the sky turned from black to indigo. Something within Siddhartha shifted, the knot untied. The wheel stopped turning. The flame of ignorance was extinguished. He opened his eyes, not as Siddhartha, but as the Buddha, the awakened one. He was 35 years old, but in that moment, he was ageless. He had seen through the illusion of self. He had pierced the veil of suffering. He had awakened to reality as it is beyond names, beyond forms, beyond duality. He smiled not with pride, but with peace, a smile that held the suffering of the world and the freedom beyond it, a smile that said, "All beings have the seed of awakening. Like me, they can all be free." Scene 6. The choice to teach for 7 days, the Buddha remained seated beneath the Bodhi tree in silent joy. He watched the world not with judgment, but with compassion. He knew the truth, but he wondered, will they understand? Can I explain something that must be felt? At first, he considered remaining silent, but then he remembered human suffering, the faces of those bound by fear, the hearts that still longed for peace, and from that compassion arose a decision. Would teach, he would walk again not as a seeker, but as a guide. He would offer the world not a religion, but a path of awakening. Scene 7. The light spreads. The Bodhi tree, under which the Buddha sat, would become sacred, not because of the tree itself, but because of what it witnessed, a human being, just like you and me, who found freedom not in gods or wealth, but in silence, presence, and understanding. The journey beneath that tree changed. The world end, it begins anew every time you sit with your breath, watch your thoughts, and choose awareness over reaction. Beneath the Bodhi tree is not just a place in India, it is a place within. Asterisk, there are many trees in this world, but beneath one, a man became awake, not to escape the world, but to embrace it fully and be free. This is the story of that awakening. And in the next chapter, the Buddha will rise and speak his first words to the world. The wheel of Dharma will turn, but for now, sit, breathe, and remember, you too have a Bodhi tree within you. After the momentous night beneath the Bodhi tree, when Siddhartha Gautama transcended suffering and became the Buddha, the awakened one, he did not rise with a desire for fame or conquest. He sat still, motionless, absorbed in the quiet majesty of his enlightenment. For 7 days he remained under the tree, not out of indecision, but reverence for the truth that had unfolded in the stillness of his heart. The world, however, remained unaware. The light of his realization, so radiant, so profound, had yet to be shared. The world was still shrouded in ignorance, desire, and suffering. But now, the Buddha possessed the medicine for humanity's pain. The question was not whether the medicine existed, it was whether others would have the strength and clarity to receive it. At first, the Buddha hesitated. He thought to himself, "This truth is deep, difficult to see, difficult to understand. It is against the current of the world, subtle, profound, to be experienced by the wise. People caught in the web of desire and hatred will not be able to grasp it. Should I teach? Should I even speak?" He sat with this thought in the forest, alone, beneath the open skies. But the universe was listening. According to tradition, it was Brahma Sahampate, the divine being, who descended from the heavens and approached the Buddha in deep reverence. With folded hands, Brahma bowed and pleaded, "There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are perishing through not hearing. The Dharma, teach, O Blessed One, open the doors to the deathless. Some will understand." And so the Buddha agreed, not for praise, not for recognition, but out of deep compassion. He would speak, he would teach, he would share what he had seen, a way, a light for those ready to walk. The Buddha now turned his attention to his first audience, not kings or sages, but the 5 ascetics, who had once been his companions during his 6 years of harsh austerity. They had abandoned him when he accepted milk rice from Sujata, believing he had fallen from the path, but the Buddha bore them no resentment. He knew they were sincere seekers, just as he had once been. He journeyed from Bodh Gaya to a place called Sarnath, near the holy city of Varanasi, where the 5 ascetics were staying in a deer park known as Isapana. As the Buddha approached, the ascetics saw him from a distance. "There comes the monk Gautama," one of them said. "Let us not rise to greet him. He abandoned the path of effort. He has turned to luxury." But as the Buddha drew closer, something in his presence stirred their hearts. He was radiant, calm, unlike any man they had ever seen. His steps were slow but firm, his eyes deep with understanding, and his face glowed with peace. Without even realizing it, the ascetics stood. They greeted him, they offered him water, they sat in silence, and then under the shade of trees, in the stillness of the deer park, the Buddha began to speak for the first time, not as a seeker, but as a teacher. His first teaching was known as Dhammacappa Vivent Sutta, the turning of the wheel of Dharma. This moment would mark the beginning of the Buddhist Sangha, the community of awakened beings. And this is what he shared, ... He spoke first of 2 extremes that seekers must avoid. There is indulgence in sensual pleasures, which is low, vulgar, ignoble, and unbeneficial. There is also self-mortification, which is painful, ignoble, and unbeneficial. He had tried both. He had lived in a palace of excess. He had lived in forests of self. Neither brought peace then. The Buddha spoke of a third with a middle path, a balanced approach that leads to insight, peace, and liberation. And from this middle path arose the Noble Eightfold Path, the core of his teaching, the practical steps to end suffering. He explained them with clarity, right view, understanding the truth of suffering and its causes, right intention, a commitment to renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness, right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and helpfully, right action, right livelihood, choosing work that does not harm, right effort, cultivating wholesome states and abandoning the unwholesome, right mindfulness, maintaining awareness of body, feelings, thoughts, and reality, right concentration, developing deep states of meditative absorption. But before the path, there was understanding. And so, the Buddha taught the heart of his realization, the 4 noble truths. Dukkha, there is suffering, life is imperfect. Aging, sickness, separation, death, loss, all are part of existence. Samudaya, there is a cause of suffering, craving, clinging, and ignorance. Nirodha, there is a cessation of suffering, the realization of nirvana. Magga, there is a path to that cessation, the Noble Eightfold Path. As the Buddha spoke, the 5 ascetics listened not just with their ears, but with their hearts. This was not mere philosophy. This was not ritual. This was not a new religion. It was a mirror held to the human experience, a way out of confusion and sorrow at the end of the discourse. Something remarkable happened. One of the ascetics, Kandina, saw the truth. His heart opened. The veils of ignorance fell away. The Buddha smiled and said, "Kandina has understood." And thus Kandina became the first disciple, the first to enter the stream of awakening. The wheel of Dharma had turned, and it would never stop. From that moment in the deer park, the teachings of the Buddha began to spread, first to 5, then to 50, then to hundreds and thousands. The Buddha did not promise salvation from a God. He did not offer miracles or magic. He offered a path. He invited each person to test it, to see for themselves, to walk with mindfulness and sincerity. And so the wheel of Dharma, once set in motion, rolled through the centuries, from the forests of India to the mountains of Tibet, to the Zen temples of Japan, the golden pagodas of Burma, the monasteries of Sri Lanka, and eventually across the oceans. To every corner of the modern world, the wheel kept turning, because suffering did not end. But now, neither did hope. Turning of the wheel was not just an ancient sermon. It was a profound reminder that truth does not belong to any one person, that wisdom is not bound by time, that each of us, in our quiet moments of suffering, confusion, or longing, can pause, breathe, and remember, there is a path, there is a way. We can awaken. And so, as the sun set over the deer park, as the trees whispered in the breeze, and the 5 ascetics sat in silent awe, the Buddha smiled not in pride, but in peace. The light had been shared, the flame had been passed, and the journey of countless beings toward freedom had begun. Chapter 6. A Life of Compassion. The Buddha walks the world. After the sacred moment beneath the Bodhi tree, after the storm of doubt had passed and the night of enlightenment had lifted, Siddhartha Gautama was no longer merely a prince. He was the Buddha, the awakened one, and yet he did not ascend into solitude. He did not retreat into the bliss of nirvana. He opened his eyes, looked around at a world still drowning in suffering, and made a choice to walk back into that world, to guide others across the ocean of sorrow. This chapter, dear listener, is not just about a man. It is about the power of compassion in action. It is about a life lived not for self, but for the awakening of all beings. This is the Buddha's life of compassion. The first step, returning for others after achieving enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. The Buddha sat in silence for 7 days. He gazed at the tree that had sheltered him. He reflected on the truth he had discovered. But then came a moment, a realization. Who will understand this? He thought. This truth is subtle, profound, too difficult for the ordinary mind to grasp. For a moment, he considered remaining in silence forever. But then, from the heart of the universe, Brahma Sahampati appeared, the celestial being. He bowed before the Buddha and pleaded, "Please, O Blessed One, let the world hear your voice. There are those with little dust in their eyes, they will understand." And so, the Buddha rose. He remembered the 5 ascetics who had once walked beside him during his 6 years of austerity. In the deer park, he delivered his first sermon, the Dhammacapapavamd Sutta, the turning of the wheel of Dharma. With those sacred words, the wheel of truth began to turn, and the world slowly began to awaken. Walking barefoot across India, the mission begins. The Buddha did not build temples. He built understanding. He walked barefoot from village to village, through forests, across rivers, under the blazing sun and monsoon rain. He had no shoes, no staff, no army, only the power of his presence and the clarity of his words, and wherever he went, people gathered. Kings bowed before him. Fishermen, farmers, warriors, and wandering monks all came with questions, and all left. With peace, he taught the 4 noble truths. He showed the path of the Eightfold Way. He did not convert, he invited. He did not command, he explained. And above all, he listened, embracing all, Even those the world had forgotten. What made the Buddha's compassion so revolutionary was that it knew no boundaries. He did not care about caste, status, gender, or wealth. Once a leper named Buddha approached him, people backed away in disgust. But the Buddha saw the suffering behind the disease. He walked up to him, spoke to him gently, and gave him teachings. When an outcast named Sunita was sweeping the streets, ashamed to even look up, the Buddha saw him, smiled, and said, "You are just like me. Come, walk the path with me." Even Angulimala, a fearsome bandit with a garland of fingers, the Buddha met him with silence and stillness. And in that silence, Angulimala's madness dissolved. He wept, he bowed, he changed. That is the power of compassion, love in action. The healing presence the Buddha did not preach from golden thrones. He sat under trees. He walked into burning homes of grief. He consoled mothers who had lost their children. He visited the sick. He taught monks to care for each other. Whoever tends to the sick, he said, tends to me. He embraced children, encouraged women, and allowed both to enter the Sangha, the spiritual community of truth seekers. He saw the suffering of all beings, from kings to beggars, from humans to animals, and his heart remained open to them all. Stories of compassion. Echoes of his journey. Let me tell you a few stories. The grieving mother, Kisa Gautami, she came to him carrying the body of her dead son. Her eyes were wild with sorrow. She begged the Buddha, "Bring him back. You have the power." The Buddha said gently, "Bring me a mustard seed from a house that has never known death." She ran from house to house, only to find every home had tasted loss. At last, she returned, not with a mustard seed, but with understanding. She wept. She bowed. She let go. The Buddha did not remove her sorrow. He helped her transcend it. The angry monk, Dividativan, those who betrayed him, like his cousin Dividatai, who sought to kill him. The Buddha met with compassion, rolled at him, and his foot bled. He did not retaliate. When monks asked to punish Dividata, he said, "Anger only breeds more anger. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." That is the revolution of the Buddha, the Sangha. Building a community of compassion, the Buddha understood that true transformation was not solitary. He built a Sangha, a community of monks and nuns, lay people and householders, all walking the path together. He taught them how to live simply, to share food, to serve the sick, to meditate, not just for peace, but for all sentient beings. He said, just as a mother would protect her only child, even at the risk of her life, let your heart extend to all beings without boundaries. This teaching became metta loving kindness. A flame passed from heart to heart until forests shimmered with silence, villages echoed with chants, and even kings sat beneath the trees, learning humility from barefoot monks. Compassion beyond words. The radiance of presence it was not just what he said, it was how he lived. He walked slowly, never rushed. He ate mindfully, blessed every bite. He listened deeply, spoke only what healed. People felt peace just being near him. Birds stopped chirping. Children grew calm. Even wild animals did not fear him. This was not magic, it was mindfulness. It was compassion radiating like sunlight. A life not lived for self. The Buddha lived 80 years and never once used his power for personal gain. He had no home. He accepted whatever food was offered. He'd never stored. He never ruled. Yet, he was a king of the inner world. He transformed murderers into monks, grief into wisdom, anger into forgiveness, and ignorance into light. Final words, still. Teaching compassion as his life neared its end, lying under the twin sal trees in Kushinagar, the Buddha's body grew frail, but his heart remained vast. He turned to Ananda, his faithful attendant, and said, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence." Even in his final breath, he was not thinking of himself, he was thinking of us. His teachings not his name, were his legacy. His compassion, not his miracles, were his light. And that light still burns. Conclusion: walking in his footsteps today. When we say Buddha, we are not just remembering a man. We are remembering a way of life. A life lived in service. A life lived in truth. A life of deep, boundless compassion. Each time we listen with kindness, forgive a hurt, feed a hungry soul, or sit in stillness with love in our hearts, we are walking the same path he once walked barefoot under the same sky, towards the same freedom, and in that the Buddha lives on. We will explore the legacy that Buddha left behind, not in temples of stone, but in the hearts of those who choose kindness, who choose presence, who choose the path of the awakened. Until then, may you be peaceful, may you be free, may you walk in compassion. Chapter 7. The Final Teaching. The Buddha's last journey and message. After years of traveling across the Indian subcontinent, teaching kings and beggars alike, healing broken minds and sowing seeds of awareness, the Buddha, now in his 80th year, knew his time in this world was nearing an end. But his heart was not heavy. There was no sorrow or fear in him, only peace, clarity, and an unshakable compassion. This is the story of the Buddha's final journey. Journey not toward death, but toward a teaching that transcends death. A journey that would give birth to his final gift to the world. The Mahaparinibbana, the great passing away. Scene transition, forest path, pilgrims walking slowly. The Buddha had spent over 45 years walking, teaching, and meditating. He had touched the lives of thousands, from powerful kings like Bimbisara and Ajnasadhu to simple farmers and outcasts once rejected by society. His disciples were growing in number. The Sangha, the community of monks and nuns, was now a powerful spiritual force, spreading light throughout the land. But despite the respect and reverence he received, Buddha remained a humble monk, carrying his bowl, wearing his tattered robes, sleeping beneath trees or in simple huts in the final year of his life. Buddha, accompanied by his faithful disciple Nanda, began what would be his last journey. He traveled from Rojagaha to Vesalk and then toward Kusinara, the forested city where his life would end but his wisdom would echo for eternity. Seen under the mango grove Vesalk one day as they were leaving the city of Vesalk. The Buddha turned to look at it one last time. He stood quietly, gazing at the city with a look of profound calm. He knew it would be his final glimpse of Vesalk, a city where he had taught so many and been welcomed with devotion. Nanda saw the look in his teacher's eyes and asked, "Why do you look upon the city, Lord, with such stillness?" The Buddha replied, "Nanda, whosoever loves something, be it a body, a place, or a possession, is bound to suffer when it passes. See the impermanence of all conditioned things," and in that scene, seeing the meal at Kunda's house as the journey continued. The Buddha arrived at the village of Piva, where a blacksmith named Kunda invited him for a meal. Out of deep devotion, Kunda offered a special dish, karama devafen, translated as soft pork, or a special truffle-like preparation. Buddha accepted the meal, blessed Kunda, and ate, but soon after he fell ill. Severe stomach pain and dysentery followed. Nanda was filled with worry and guilt. "Why did you eat that food, Lord? Was it what caused this sickness?" But Buddha, even in his pain, reassured him, "Kunda should feel no blame. He has given me my last meal, and whoever gives food to a Buddha in this way earns great merit. Tell him this, Nanda. Let him know he has done a beautiful deed." Seen resting along the road, the compassion continues despite his illness. The Buddha insisted on walking. He stopped to rest frequently, offering teachings and blessings along the way. In one village, he saw a sick monk lying alone, for he immediately asked his disciples, "Why is this monk unattended?" They said, "Lord, he is sick and has no one to care for him." And the Buddha replied, "Monks, you have no mother or father to care for you. If you do not care for one another, whoever tends to the sick tends to me." Even in his final days, his compassion flowed as strongly as ever. The Buddha felt his final moment approaching. He asked Nanda to prepare a bed between the twin SL trees. He lay down on his right side, the traditional posture of resting and letting go as he rested. The trees suddenly burst into unseasonal bloom. Flowers rained gently from the sky. The heavens themselves seemed to mourn the imminent loss and, yet, at the same time, to rejoice in his transition, seeing Nanda's tears sitting nearby. Nanda wept silently. Buddha called him over. "Do not grieve, Nanda," he said. "All things that are born, that arise, that are compounded must also pass. This is the law of nature. You have served me with great love and kindness. But now you must walk your path. Be a lamp unto yourself." These words struck deep. Be a lamp unto yourself. Atta Deepa Viharata. Dwell with yourself as your own light. This was his final instruction. Do not seek salvation outside of yourself. Do not cling to form or ritual. The truth is not in a person, but in your own awareness. The final words, as the last breath approached, a hush fell over the grove. The disciples gathered around, monks, nuns, villagers, all silent, watching. The Buddha then spoke his final words. All compounded things are subject to decay. Strive diligently for your liberation. Then, with a final breath, the Buddha entered into Mayaparinibbana, the great nirvana, a passing not into death, but into the silence beyond birth and death. Scene: the silence that followed, sal trees shedding flowers, the earth trembled. The SL trees rained blossoms. The universe paused, but there was no chaos, no screams, only tears of reverence. The body was later cremated, and his relics were divided among kings and kingdoms. Stupas were built across the land to enshrine them. But the Buddha himself, he had never been confined to a body. His truth, his teachings, the Dharma, now the real legacy. The Buddha's final message continues to echo through centuries, that nothing is permanent, that clinging leads to suffering, that awakening is possible for everyone, and most importantly, you are your own refuge. This simple truth continues to light the path for seekers. Even today, from monasteries in Tibet and temples in Thailand to quiet meditation corners in New York or New Delhi, the Buddha left no miracles, no dogmas, no saviors. Promise, he left only the path, a path you must walk for yourself, and so ends the life of the Buddha. Not in sorrow, but in peace. Not in silence, but in the soundless echo of awakening. Let his final teaching not be an end, but the beginning of your own path. Before the cities were built, before the wars were fought, before even the ideas of nations and kings had taken root, there was a quiet kingdom nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas. The Shakya kingdom, a land of green valleys, flowing rivers, and ancient forests. In this land ruled King Suddhodana, a noble and wise ruler, respected and loved by his people. He ruled from his capital city, Kapilavastu, with Queen Maya by his side, a woman of grace, compassion, and serenity. Together, they prayed for a child not born merely of desire, but of divine promise. And then one night, as the moon rose full in the sky and bathed the world in silver light, Queen Maya had a dream that would echo through eternity, dreamsequence.com, and spiritual tone in her dream. Queen Maya was carried by celestial beings to a lake at the top of a sacred mountain. There, as she bathed in the calm, clear waters, a radiant white elephant appeared, pure, noble, and luminous. It approached her gently, carrying a lotus flower in its trunk. Without words, without sound, the elephant entered her side. And in that moment, Queen Maya knew. A being of light had descended into her womb, a soul unlike any other, a bodhisattva, who had fulfilled his many lifetimes of compassion and wisdom. And now, in this life, he would awaken. Narrator: when Queen Maya awoke, she was calm and radiant. The dream was shared with King Suddhodana, and wise sages were called to interpret its meaning. Their words were clear and profound. Your son will become either a Chakravartina great world ruler, or a Buddha one who renounces the world and leads countless beings to liberation. The king rejoiced. But in his heart, he desired only one outcome. He hoped the child would become a mighty king and rule the world through strength and wisdom. But fate had already chosen a different path. As the months passed, the kingdom rejoiced in anticipation. The air itself seemed lighter, as if nature awaited the birth with reverence. And then, on a morning unlike any other, Queen Maya, following the custom of her people, set out to give birth at her parental home. Along the way, she stopped at the Lumbini Garden, a place of serene beauty filled with blooming trees, singing birds, and gentle breezes. There, under the shade of a sal tree, she reached up to grasp a branch, and with no pain, no fear, she gave birth standing. The earth trembled gently. Lotus flowers bloomed from the ground. Soft rain fell from a clear sky, and in that sacred moment, the Prince Siddhartha was born. Narrator whispered reverence. He took 7 steps. Yes. As the story goes, the newborn prince stood and walked 7 steps. With each step, a lotus bloomed beneath his feet. And at the final step, he stopped, raised one hand to the sky and one to the earth, and declared, "In this life, I shall awaken. This shall be my final birth." The animals bowed, the trees swayed. The world paused, as if even the stars above listened. The Bodhisattva had arrived. The celebration was grand. The kingdom rejoiced. King Suddhodana beamed with pride, and Queen Maya, though filled with joy, would not live long enough to raise her divine child. Just 7 days after the birth, she passed away peacefully, as if her sacred task was complete. The child was raised by her sister, Mahaprajapati, who loved him as her own. But even in infancy, Siddhartha was no ordinary child. He did not cry often. He was quiet and observant. His eyes were deep pools of knowing, as if he had lived 1,000 lives and remembered each one. The palace astrologers gathered again to examine the signs. They pointed to rare planetary alignments, markings on his tiny body, the softness of his skin, the curl of hair between his eyebrows, and the webbed digits between his fingers and toes, a mark of an enlightened being. They repeated, "This child is destined for greatness. He will either become the ruler of the world or renounce everything and lead the world to liberation." To King Suddhodana, these words were both blessing and threat. For deep within his heart, he feared the prophecy of renunciation. He feared losing his son to the wandering path of the ascetic, so he made a decision, one that would shape the young prince's future. He would build 3 magnificent palaces for Siddhartha, one for summer, one for winter, and one for the monsoon season. Inside those palace walls, he would give Siddhartha every comfort, every pleasure, and shield him from pain, suffering, and death. There would be no old age, no illness, no loss, no monks, no sorrow, only joy, music, and beauty. And so, Siddhartha grew up surrounded by luxury and abundance. His every need met before it arose. Silks draped his body, perfumes scented the air, servants fulfilled every wish, and dancers enchanted his eyes with their graceful movements. He learned the Vedas, mastered the art of warfare, philosophy, and language. He was brilliant, intelligent, disciplined, and gentle. His kindness won the hearts of all. He married the beautiful and graceful Yasodhara, and soon they had a son Rahula that it seemed. Perfect, a life any human would desire, a life crafted to keep suffering away. And yet, even in that perfection, even in that garden of pleasure, a restlessness grew in the young prince's heart. He would gaze at the sky for hours. He would sit quietly under trees, lost in thought. He asked questions that troubled even the wisest tutors. Why do people grow old? Why do the strong become weak? Why do the loved ones die? Is there no escape from sorrow? The walls around him were high, but the soul within him was reaching beyond. Like a bird kept in a golden cage, Siddhartha longed to see the world outside, to understand the nature of life, to uncover what lies beneath the surface. And thus begins the journey. We'll take him through suffering and silence, through forests and mountains, through fear and transcendence, until he becomes not just a man, but a mirror for all of humanity. The Buddha was not born with a crown. He was born with questions, and in his search for answers, he found something more valuable than power. He found freedom, and so ends Chapter 1, the birth of Siddhartha. Not just the birth of a child, but the beginning of a journey that would awaken the world. The story continues. After the miraculous birth of Siddhartha, the entire Shakya kingdom rejoiced. Priests sang hymns, sages offered prayers, and the earth seemed to pause for a moment in time. The king believed his legacy was secure, but a silent anxiety nestled deep within his heart. The prophecy still lingered in his mind that his son would either become a world conqueror or renounce everything to become a fully enlightened Buddha. King Suddhodana, though wise and kind, was also a father gripped by attachment. He wanted his son to remain close, to inherit the throne, to live a life of glory. Not solitude, he could not bear the thought of Siddhartha leaving the palace, leaving the world, and choosing a path of renunciation. So he devised a plan to protect his son from the world's suffering. The king built 3 palaces, one for summer, one for winter, and one for the rainy season. Each palace was more lavish than the last. Gardens stretched endlessly, carpets made of silk from distant lands, walls adorned with golden motifs. Musicians played melodies that calmed even the most restless heart. Within those palaces, every form of pleasure and delight was present. Only the young, only the beautiful, only the joyful were allowed in Siddhartha's presence. The aged, the ill, the sorrowful were all kept far away. The world's reality was veiled. All that remained was a carefully crafted illusion. Sid was surrounded by beauty, but not truth. He had friends, tutors, servants, and dancers, but no one to share in his questions. Everything was perfect, yet something within him remained unsettled. Even as a young child, he would find moments of silence between the festivities, sitting under the trees in the palace gardens, watching the clouds drift, listening to the birdsong. He would ask questions like, where do the seasons go? Why do the flowers wither? Why do people grow old? His tutors tried to distract him with philosophy and politics. His caretakers offered sweet foods and soft blankets. But the prince was drawn inward, drawn to something that lay beyond comfort. He was not just curious, he was aware, and awareness is a doorway to truth. As Siddhartha grew, he became the embodiment of grace and virtue. He excelled in archery, swordsmanship, horse riding. He mastered ancient texts, and his teachers marveled at his insight. He was noble and kind, humble and compassionate. He did not take pride in being the prince. He did not seek pleasure for its own sake. Even as others praised him, he remained inwardly still, as though listening to a voice no one else could hear. That voice was the whisper of truth. In time, Siddhartha was married to a beautiful Princessia Stadhara. Their union was celebrated. Across the kingdom, she was his equal in intellect and grace. Together, they shared gentle love, quiet laughter, and noble conversation. Soon after, they were blessed with a son, Rahula. To the outside world, Siddhartha had everything: wealth, power, love, knowledge, fame. But inside, a quiet storm began to grow. He began to wake in the middle of the night, walking silently through the gardens, looking up at the stars with a strange longing in his heart. Even his beloved Yasodhara noticed that his eyes were elsewhere, lost, but searching. What could he be searching for? He began to ask deeper questions. He asked his attendants, "Do people in the kingdom never grow old? Are there no sick people beyond the palace? Has no one ever died?" They hesitated. They had been instructed to never speak of such things. But one elderly servant, with trembling hands and soft eyes, whispered the truth. "Yes, my lord, we all age. The body weakens, the bones ache. Illness comes to everyone, even kings, and death. Death comes for all." Siddhartha fell silent. That night, he walked barefoot through the marble halls of the palace, not as a prince, but as a seeker. The laughter from the banquet echoed in the distance. The music played on, but to him, it now felt hollow. The dancers twirl, but he saw the exhaustion in their eyes. He saw the servants smile, but behind their smiles was fatigue. He saw flowers placed around golden bowls, but their petals were already beginning to wilt. Suddenly, the illusion cracked. This was not perfection. This was a world painted with temporary colors, and beneath it lay the truth of impermanence. The king noticed the change. He tightened the controls. He ordered the palace walls to be raised higher. He ordered the guards to be more watchful. He added more distractions, more pleasures. But you cannot cover the sun with your hands. You cannot silence the soul that has begun to awaken. No matter how sweet the fruit, if the tree is dying inside, the sweetness is only an illusion. Siddhartha could no longer unsee what he felt. A silent pull toward the truth was growing within him. The laughter no longer stirred joy. The luxuries no longer brought peace. The songs no longer reached his heart. He had lived in paradise, but now he saw its walls. There is a lesson here. For all of us, we too, in modern times, live behind palace walls. Walls built not of stone, but of distractions, of endless desires, of digital noise. We surround ourselves with comforts, phones, shows, possessions, plans, thinking they will protect us from the truth of change, of suffering, of death. But like Siddhartha, there comes a moment when we pause and look beneath it all, and in that moment, the journey begins. Did not yet leave. Not yet, but the seed had been planted. The veil had lifted. He now looked at everything, his wife, his child, his riches. Not with disdain, but with understanding. He saw that nothing he possessed could bring lasting freedom. Everything would one day fade. And something inside him refused to settle for anything less than truth. And so the chapter closes. Not with an ending, but with a beginning. A young prince with the world at his feet. Choosing instead to search for the soul behind the world, in the stillness of his heart, he knew that the illusion of comfort was not the same as the presence of peace. And to find true peace, he would have to leave it all behind. Thus ends Chapter 2, The Palace Life, Illusion of Comfort. A reminder that even the most beautiful prison is still a prison, and the only path to freedom is truth. The world within the palace was perfect, or at least it was meant to be. Prince Siddhartha had everything wealth beyond imagination. A devoted wife, a newborn son, gardens that bloomed in every season, music that never ceased, and servants who fulfilled every wish before it was even spoken. Yet he was restless, not with impatience, but with a longing. A longing not for more, but for truth. He had tasted every comfort, yet something inside whispered, there is more to life than this. Narrator. One morning, as the sun filtered softly through the silk curtains of his chamber, Siddhartha stood at the edge of the palace balcony, gazing at the distant horizon. The sky was wide and open. The mountains beyond seemed to call him. Why must I remain inside these walls? He asked softly. Day after day, he saw the same smiling faces, heard the same songs, walked the same stone paths. He yearned to see beyond, to know what lay outside the palace gates. He asked his charioteer, Chuna, let me see the city, the people, the real world. Chuna hesitated. The king had forbidden it. But Siddhartha was gentle, insistent. And so the golden chariot was prepared. and on a quiet morning, they rode out. The prince's first steps into the real world were not met with celebration, but with revelation. As the chariot moved through the village roads, he saw something he had never seen before. An old man. His back was bent. His face was lined with wrinkles. His hands trembled as he held a walking stick. His breath was shallow. Siddhartha stared, astonished. "Channa, what is wrong with this man? Why does he walk so slowly? Why does he look so weak?" Channa replied gently, "My lord, he is old. This is the nature of all beings. Time spares no one. One day, even you will age." Siddhartha was silent. The thought was like a stone dropped into a still pond. Aging, decay, weakness. He had never seen it before. He had never thought it possible for his body to one day fail. His illusion began to crack. They continued their journey. Soon, he saw a man lying by the roadside, groaning in pain, his skin pale and his body shaking. He coughed violently, his eyes filled with suffering. Siddhartha turned away, disturbed. "What afflicts this man? Is he cursed?" Channa replied with a bowed head. "No, my prince, he is sick. Illness comes to all rich or poor, noble or servant. The body is not always strong. Even health is impermanent." The prince felt a wave of sorrow rise within him. "So even the young and strong can fall like this. Even I may suffer illness." Channa nodded, and another veil was lifted. Further down the road, a small crowd had gathered near the temple gates. The center of the gathering lay a still body covered in a white cloth, unmoving, lifeless, a dead man. Some prayed, some simply stared. Helpless, Siddhartha felt the air grow cold. "What has happened to him, Channa? Why does he not speak? Why does he not move?" Channa's voice was quiet, yet steady. "He is dead, my lord. His breath has stopped. His time has come. Death comes for all sooner or later." Siddhartha froze. His world shifted. The ground beneath him felt uncertain. "Will this happen to me?" he asked. "Yes, my prince. This is the fate of all beings born. We all must die. Old age, illness, death. Three truths he had never known. Three realities hidden from him his entire life. Three faces of impermanence. Now revealed in a single day, Siddhartha sat quietly in the chariot. No words, only silence. The world he had known was gone, and in its place was a vast open question. If all things perish, what is the purpose of life? Just then, the sound of a bell echoed softly in the distance, and as they turned a quiet corner, Siddhartha saw a man dressed in saffron robes, walking slowly with a calm smile on his face. He held a begging bowl in one hand and a staff in the other. His steps were deliberate. His eyes were peaceful. He seemed untouched by sorrow. "Who is this man, Channa?" Siddhartha asked. Channa answered, "He is a renunciant wandering monk. He has given up family, wealth, and power. To search for truth, to seek liberation from the suffering of life." Siddhartha watched the monk walk by. He had seen old age, sickness, and death. And now he saw hope, a path beyond suffering. A life dedicated not to indulgence or denial, but to truth. And so, in a single day, the prince saw what millions overlook in a lifetime. He saw the impermanence of youth, the fragility of health, the certainty of death, and the possibility of awakening. The four sights had pierced the veil, the illusion of comfort, the palace of pleasure, the dream of permanence. All had faded. That night, Siddhartha returned to the palace. But something within him had changed. The laughter of the courtiers sounded distant. The music felt hollow. The golden walls seemed like a cage. He looked at his sleeping wife and newborn son. He loved them deeply, but even that love could not answer the questions burning within him. Is there a way out of this cycle? Can suffering be ended? Is there something beyond birth and death? He could no longer pretend. He could no longer remain confined. This chapter of his life, like all things, was coming to an end. Siddhartha had seen the truth. And truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. The seed of renunciation had taken root. The path ahead would be difficult, uncertain, but it would be his path. He would no longer seek answers in silk and song, but in silence and solitude. And though he had not yet left, his heart had already begun the journey. Thus ends Chapter 3, The Four Sights, a glimpse beyond the walls. Sometimes, a single day, a single moment, can shatter everything and begin something far more beautiful. Let us to open our eyes and see the world as it is, not with fear, but with wisdom. The path to awakening always begins with seeing clearly. In the stillness of the ancient forests, beneath the whispering leaves of a Bodhi tree, a young prince once sat. He had renounced the riches of his kingdom, the comforts of royalty, and the ties of family, all for one purpose: to find the truth of life, the end of suffering, and the eternal light within. This is the journey to enlightenment. This is the life of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Chapter 1. The birth of Siddhartha over 2,500 years ago. In the lush and sacred gardens of Lumbini in present-day Nepal, Queen Maya of the Shakya clan gave birth to a son. According to legend, she dreamt of a white elephant entering her womb, a sign of divine purpose. As she gave birth under the branches of a sal tree, the earth trembled, and lotus flowers bloomed in celebration. Wise sages prophesied he would either become a great king or a spiritual savior. His father, King Hudodana, hoped for the former, and so Siddhartha's life was carefully protected from pain, sorrow, and the realities of the world. Chapter 2. Life inside the palace. Siddhartha grew up surrounded by wealth and luxury, never exposed to old age, illness, death, or any kind of suffering. His father built for him 3 magnificent palaces, one for each season, and ensured he was never touched by the harsh truths of life. He married a beautiful princess, Yashodhara, and together they had a son, Rahul. It seemed as though had everything a person could want. But deep inside, he felt an emptiness, a quiet voice calling him beyond the walls of the palace. Something was missing. A deeper truth was waiting to be discovered. Chapter 3. The Four Sights, One Day Driven. By curiosity, Siddhartha requested to venture outside the palace grounds. His charioteer reluctantly took him on a journey that would change everything. On his excursions, Siddhartha saw 4 sights: an old man, hunched and frail, the reality of aging; a sick man, moaning in pain, the truth of suffering; a dead body being carried in a funeral procession, the certainty of death; a wandering monk, peaceful and calm, the possibility of liberation. These visions shattered his sheltered understanding of life. Siddhartha realized that no wealth, power, or pleasure could protect anyone from suffering. There had to be a way to rise above it all, and thus the seed of renunciation was planted. Chapter 4. The Great Renunciation, One Moonlit Night. As the palace lay sleeping, Siddhartha made the most difficult decision of his life. He kissed his sleeping wife and son goodbye. He removed his royal robes, shaved his head, and exchanged his jewels for the simple garb of an ascetic, riding away on his faithful horse Kanthaka with his loyal servant Chuna. Siddhartha left behind everything he had ever known, into the forests, determined to find the truth, the end of suffering, the path to inner freedom. This moment would be remembered as the Great Renunciation. Chapter 5. The Path of Extremes. For 6 long years, Siddhartha wandered through forests and sat with sages. He studied deep meditation, starved himself, and practiced intense austerities. He pushed his body to its limits, believing that self-denial would bring liberation. He lived on a grain of rice a day, held his breath until his veins swelled, and sat unmoving through scorching heat and freezing winds. But the truth eluded him. One day, near death from starvation, Siddhartha accepted a bowl of milk and rice from a kind village girl named Su. Strength returned to his body, and with it came a realization. Neither indulgence nor extreme denial is the path. The truth lies in the middle way. With that wisdom, he walked to the banks of the Naranjana River and sat beneath a large Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. He vowed, "I shall not rise from this seat until I attain enlightenment." Chapter 6. The Night of Awakening. As Siddhartha meditated beneath the Bodhi tree, Mara, the Lord of Illusions, appeared. Mara attacked him with storms, seductive temptations, and an army of demons, not with weapons, but with fear, doubt, and desire. But Siddhartha remained unmoved. He touched the earth with his right hand, calling it to witness his worthiness. The earth shook. Mara fled. As the night passed, Siddhartha's awareness deepened. He saw his past lives, understood the workings of karma, and perceived the four noble truths. Life is suffering. Suffering arises from desire. There is a way to end suffering. The Eightfold Path is the way. As the first light of dawn broke, Siddhartha opened his eyes, not as a man, but as the Buddha, the awakened one. Chapter 7. Sharing the light for 7 days. The Buddha remained beneath the tree, immersed in perfect peace. The universe seemed still, as if it too was meditating. Then he rose and walked toward Sarnath, where 5 ascetics who had once followed him were meditating there. He delivered his first sermon, the Dhammacappappavant, Sutta or turning, the wheel of Dharma. He spoke of the middle way, the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path: right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. With this, the wheel of Dharma was set into motion. The 5 ascetics became the first monks. A community was born, the Sangha. Chapter 8. The long journey for the next 45 years. The Buddha walked across the plains of India. He taught kings and beggars, men and women, rich and poor, regardless of caste or creed. He spoke with compassion, simplicity, and clarity. He taught that the path to liberation was not in rituals or beliefs, but in direct insight into the nature of mind and reality. He founded a spiritual revolution, not through conquest, but through wisdom and love. Chapter 9. The Final Teaching Nat, the Age of 80. In the town of Kushinagar, the Buddha lay between 2 sal trees. His final words were, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your salvation with diligence." With that, he entered Mahaparinirvana, the final passing beyond all cycles of rebirth. The trees bloomed out of season. The earth trembled once more. A light had left the world, but his teachings remained as a beacon for all who seek truth. Chapter 10. The Legacy of the Buddhate. Over 2,500 years later, the Buddha's message still resonates in temples, meditation halls, homes, and hearts around the world. His voice is still heard, gently reminding us, peace is within. The path is now. You are not alone. The journey to enlightenment begins not in the forests of India or under a distant tree, but here, in this very moment. As the Buddha said, "You are your own master. The truth is within you. Walk the path." Closing gentle meditation music fades in. Let the teachings of the Buddha guide your thoughts. Let his compassion soften your heart, and may you too awaken to the light within. This was the journey to enlightenment, the life of the Buddha. In a time when kingdoms rose and fell by the sword, one prince walked away from power to sit in silence beneath a tree. He had no army, no wealth, no throne. Yet his silence moved the world. This is the story of Siddhartha Gautama. This is the journey to enlightenment. Chapter 1. A birth like no other in the tranquil gardens of Lumbini. Around the 6th century BCE, Queen Maya Devi gave birth to a child who would shake the foundations of the world not through war, but through wisdom. Radiant white elephant entering her side, interpreted by sages as the arrival of a divine soul, as she leaned against a sal tree. The child was born miraculously clean, calm, and wise. He took 7 steps, and with each step, a lotus flower bloomed. He looked to the sky and declared, "This is my last birth. I have come to end all suffering." The child was named Siddhartha, meaning one who achieves his goal. Chapter 2. A gilded cage Siddhartha grew up in the kingdom of Kapilavastu, surrounded by luxury and shielded from pain. His father, King Suddhodana, wanted to prevent him from ever becoming a spiritual seeker. Prophecies had foretold that Siddhartha would become either a great king or a great spiritual teacher. To ensure the former, the king drowned him in pleasures. 3 palaces for different seasons, dancers, musicians, gardens, and fountains. The finest clothes, jewels, and food. He was married to Yashodhara, a princess of noble beauty, and soon they had a son named Rahula. But deep inside Siddhartha, a question stirred like a breeze through a silent lake. What lies beyond this palace? What is the meaning of life? Chapter 3. The foresights at the age of 29. Siddhartha left the palace with his charioteer, Chana. For the first time, he witnessed the raw truth of human existence. First, he saw an old man, bent with age. Then, a sick man, writhing, in pain. Next, a dead body, being carried in a funeral procession. And finally, he saw a wandering monk, serene and detached. He turned to Chana and asked, "Are these the fate of all men?" Chana nodded silently. Siddhartha's world shattered. His luxurious life was an illusion. The real world was filled with suffering, aging, sickness, and death. And yet, the monk smiled, peaceful amidst the sorrow. In that moment, Siddhartha understood there must be a way out of this suffering. Chapter 4. The Great Departure. 1. Silent Night. Siddhartha stood at the edge of his son's nursery. He looked at his sleeping wife and child, his heart heavy with love and purpose. He whispered, "When I return, it will be with the answer to end all sorrow." He left the palace, cut his hair, removed his ornaments, and exchanged his silken robes for simple rags. Thus began the great renunciation. He walked into the forests, giving up everything to gain something far greater, the truth. Chapter 5. Years of asceticism. Siddhartha studied under great spiritual masters. He learned deep meditation, breath control, trance, and stillness. Then, with 5 other ascetics, he pushed the limits of human endurance, eating 1 grain of rice a day, meditating for days without moving. Sleeping on thorns, denying every comfort, he grew frail, skin clinging to bone. The more he denied the body, the more distant truth seemed. One day, he collapsed. Near death, a village girl named Sujata offered him a bowl of warm rice milk. He accepted. Life returned to his limbs. In that moment, Siddhartha realized neither indulgence nor self-mortification leads to truth. There is a middle path. He left the ascetics and walked Allen towards a tree in Bodh Gaya. Chapter 6. Under the Bodhi tree. Siddhartha sat under the Bodhi tree, vowing, "I shall not rise until I attain the truth." Night fell, silence deepened. But so did temptation. Mara, the Lord of Illusion, appeared trying to break Siddhartha's focus. He sent thunderstorms, sensual temptations, armies of demons, doubts, fears, ego. But Siddhartha remained still. At the final test, Mara demanded proof of Siddhartha's right to enlightenment. In response, Siddhartha touched the earth, and the earth itself roared, "I bear you witness." At dawn, Siddhartha opened his eyes not as a prince, not as a seeker, but as the Buddha, the enlightened one. He had pierced the veil of illusion and discovered the impermanence of all things, the chain of birth and death, the origin and cessation of suffering. Chapter 7. The first teaching. The Buddha walked to Sarnath, where the 5 ascetics resided. They mocked him at first, thinking he had broken his vows. But when they saw his aura, his calm, radiant presence, they listened. There he gave his first sermon, known as the turning of the wheel of Dharma. He shared the four noble truths. Dukkha, life is suffering; samudaya, suffering arises from desire; nirada, there is an end to suffering; magga, the eightfold path is the way. Thus began the Sangha, the community of monks and seekers. Chapter 8. A life of teaching for 45 years. The Buddha walked the dusty roads of India on bare feet. With a bowl in hand, he taught not from scriptures, but from silence, compassion, and clarity. He taught kings and beggars, women and men, and outcast. He challenged caste, blind rituals, and dogma. He showed that liberation was possible here and now. His teachings were simple, yet profound. Be a lamp unto yourself. All that arises passes away. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but by love alone. Chapter 9. The final journey at the age of 80. In the town of Kushinagar, the Buddha sensed his time had come. He lay down between two sal trees. The leaves turned golden and fell in soft showers. His final words were, all composite things are perishable. Strive diligently for your liberation. With a calm breath, he entered Mahaparinirvana, final liberation. The world wept, but a flame had been lit, a light that would never fade. Chapter 10. The Eternal Path Today. The Buddha's teachings echo across mountains, rivers, temples, and hearts. He is not just a figure of the past, but a mirror of what we too can become. His life reminds us that suffering is not the end, that peace lies not outside, but within. That the path is not in belief, but in awakening. We don't need to sit under a Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree lives within us. All we need is to pause, breathe, and listen to the silence within. Just as a candle can light 1,000 others without losing its flame, so too can your awakening light the path for many. The Buddha was once like us, and we can become like the Buddha. More than 2,500 years ago, in a land of towering mountains and ancient rivers, a prince walked away from his throne. That silence would echo through millennia. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. This is the story of his journey, from prince to seeker to Buddha, awakened one. Chapter 1. A sacred birth. Siddhartha was born in Lumbini, near the foothills of the Himalayas, into the powerful Shakya clan. His father, King Suddhodana, ruled the kingdom of Kapilavastu. His mother, Queen Maya Devi, had a dream before his birth. A white elephant with 6 tusks entered her side. The court astrologers interpreted this as a sign of a great soul. Queen Maya gave birth while traveling to her parental home. According to tradition, she gave birth standing under a sal tree in the garden. As the legend says, the newborn Siddhartha took 7 steps, and with each step, a lotus flower blossomed. He declared, "This is my final birth. I am born to attain enlightenment and liberate all beings." 7 days later, Maya Devi passed away, and Siddhartha was raised by her sister, Mahaprajapati Gautami, from the beginning. His life was unlike any other. Chapter 2. The palace of illusions. King Suddhodana was determined to shield his son from anything unpleasant. He wanted Siddhartha to become a great emperor, not a spiritual teacher. He surrounded Siddhartha with pleasure, beauty, and distraction. 3 magnificent palaces were built, each for a different season. The young prince lived in a world of golden furniture, silken drapes, marble floors, entertainers, dancers, and musicians, exotic foods, perfumes, and rare jewels. He was trained in warfare, horse riding, swordsmanship, archery, and philosophy. At age 16, Siddhartha married Princess Yashodhara, a woman of grace and intelligence. Their union was joyous, and eventually they had a son, Rahula, meaning fetter, a symbolic name that reminded Siddhartha of the attachments that held him back. Yet despite this life of abundance, Siddhartha often sat in silent contemplation. He felt that all this splendor was fleeting. What is the purpose of life if everything we cling to will one day fade and die? These thoughts became louder, more urgent. Chapter 3. The Foresights, Cracks in the Illusionate Age. 29. Siddhartha's curiosity overcame the king's restrictions. He asked to leave the palace and see the world. On 4 separate trips outside the palace walls, Siddhartha encountered what are now called the Foresights, an old man, bent and frail. Does this happen to all men? Yes, my prince, replied the charioteer, a sick man moaning in pain. Is this the fate of everyone? Yes, none are spared from illness. A corpse, lifeless and cold. Even the wealthy and strong die. Yes, death comes to all. A monk walking calmly with a begging bowl, radiating peace. Who is he? Free from sorrow. A renunciant, seeking truth beyond this world. These visions pierced Siddhartha's heart. Life is suffering. There must be a way out. Chapter 4. The Great Renunciation, leaving it all behind, haunted by what he had seen. Siddhartha's heart became heavy. One night, as the moon glowed over Kapilavastu, Siddhartha kissed his sleeping wife and son goodbye. With his loyal horse Kanthaka and his charioteer Channa, he rode to the edge of the forest. There, he removed his princely garments, cut his hair, and gave away his ornaments. He handed his sword and jewelry to Channa. Tell my father, I have not abandoned him. I seek truth for him, for you, for all. Thus began the Great Renunciation, the bold step into the unknown in pursuit of ultimate wisdom. Chapter 5. The path of self-denial. Siddhartha sought out spiritual teachers and learned powerful forms of meditation. He mastered jhanas, meditative absorptions, and subtle states of awareness, but none brought full liberation. Then he joined a group of 5 ascetics and began extreme austerities. He meditated without moving for days. He starved himself until his bones protruded. He lived on 1 grain of rice a day. His skin grew pale, his breath shallow. He nearly died. One day, while bathing in the Naranjana River, he collapsed. A village girl named Sujata offered him sweet rice and milk. He accepted. The 5 ascetics were shocked. They believed he had broken his spiritual discipline and abandoned him. But Siddhartha had realized a powerful truth. Extremes of pleasure and pain both bind us. The path to liberation lies in the middle way. Chapter 6. The Enlightenment under the Bodhi. Tree refreshed and clear, Siddhartha walked to a large fig tree in Bodh Gaya and sat beneath it, vowing, "Let my skin, sinews, and bones dry up. I will not rise until I attain full awakening." For 7 days and nights, he meditated in perfect stillness. Mara, the personification of illusion, appeared with armies of demons, tempests, and fire-sensual temptations, voices of doubt and fear. Mara cried, "Who are you to claim enlightenment?" Siddhartha touched the earth with his right hand. The earth itself spoke, "I am witness to his countless lifetimes of virtue." Mara fled. As the morning star rose, Siddhartha opened his eyes. The veil of illusion had lifted. He saw the nature of reality. All phenomena arise and pass away. Desire is the root of suffering. Liberation is possible. The path lies within. Was now the Buddha, the awakened one. Chapter 7. The first turning of the Dharma wheel. The Buddha walked to Sarnath, where his 5 former companions were meditating. They were skeptical at first, but when they saw his radiant calm, they listened. He gave his first sermon, introducing the 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This was the turning of the wheel of Dharma. The Sangha, the community of seekers, was born. Chapter 8. Spreading the Dharma for the next 45 years. The Buddha walked barefoot across the Indian subcontinent. He taught merchants and kings, outcasts and courtesans, monks, nuns, and ordinary people, he did not speak of gods or heavens. He spoke of mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion. He welcomed women into the Sanghahan act radical for his time. He challenged the caste system, superstition, and violence. He showed through example that liberation was not a belief, but an experience. Chapter 9. The Final Days, Mahaparinirvan, age 80. The Buddha sensed his time was near. In Kushinagar, he lay on his side. Between twin sal trees, his final words were, "All compounded things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence." With one final deep breath, he entered Mahaparinirvana, the final, peaceful liberation. From all cycles of rebirth, the sal trees blossomed out of season. The earth trembled. The Buddha was gone, and yet he was everywhere. Chapter 10. The Eternal Phlegmatidae. The Buddha's teachings guide millions across the world, in temples and monasteries, in mountain caves and city streets. In silence and in sound, the Dharma lives on. Just as the moon reflects in every lake, the awakened mind can arise in every heart. You don't have to be a monk. You don't have to give up your life. You just have to awaken to see clearly, live kindly, and walk mindfully. The journey to enlightenment begins now. Final chapter. The awakening within. Conclusion in the quiet aftermath of the Buddha's passing. As the earth stood still beneath the spreading branches of the sala trees, the silence did not signal an ending, but rather a gentle beginning. The life of Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who renounced the palace for the path of truth, had come full circle. But his teachings, his compassion, and his light, these were not extinguished with the final breath. They were passed on like a flame from one lamp to another, spreading gently, illuminating hearts across time, culture, and consciousness. The journey of the Buddha is not only a historical account, it is a mirror reflecting the potential within all of us. Siddhartha's footsteps are etched not on a distant land, but in the very ground of our own inner world. Each stage of his life, from sheltered luxury to soul-wrenching doubt, from renunciation to radiant awakening, owes our own struggles, choices, and longings. We all, in some form, live in our palaces surrounded by comforts, yet restless. We too catch glimpses of suffering of old age, of illness, of death, and the search for something more. The Buddha's foresights weren't visions exclusive to him. There are moments of deep realization that arise in all human lives when we dare to look beyond the surface. And like Siddhartha, we are each faced with a choice, to turn away or to turn inward. The great renunciation was not merely about leaving behind riches, it was about letting go of illusions. Every time we choose authenticity over approval, silence over noise, stillness over distraction, we follow that same renunciation. The Bodhi tree is not just a tree in Bodh. Gayet is symbolic of the silent, sacred place within us where realization dawns. Each breath, each mindful moment is an opportunity to sit under that tree. What the Buddha discovered beneath those branches was not some mystical power, but a truth that had always been present, that suffering arises not from life itself, but from the mind's grasping from our desires, our aversions, our ignorance. And the path to freedom is not in conquering the world, but in understanding the self. He offered no dogma, no divine commandments, only tools. The Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, mindfulness, compassion, wisdom. These are not religious relics. They are living, breathing principles that you and I can apply in the marketplace, in traffic, during conflict, during joy, in loneliness, and love. The teachings are subtle, yet profound. In a world that shouts, the Dharma whispers. It does not promise instant results. It invites practice, observation, humility. But as millions have discovered, it transforms from the inside out. Anger softens. Restlessness quiets. The mind becomes a friend rather than a tormentor. And so, the story continues, not in ancient scrolls, not just in monasteries, but in the simple moments of daily life. When you rise in the morning and take a mindful breath, you honor the Buddha. When you listen with patience, instead of interrupting you, walk his path. When you forgive, let go, and choose kindness, you water the seeds of awakening within. When you question your thoughts, instead of blindly believing them, you practice insight. This is not fiction. This is not fantasy. This is the reality of what it means to live a conscious life. Even in today's noisy, distracted, fast-paced world, the Dharma has not lost its power. In fact, it has never been more relevant, because no amount of external achievement can quiet an untrained mind, and no number of distractions can fill the silent ache of disconnection from ourselves. The Buddha's final teaching was simple. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. In these few words, he gave the essence of liberation. Everything changes. Every thought, every body, every possession, every emotion. Knowing this, we don't cling. We don't resist. We flow. To strive with diligence is not to strain, but to be awake, to be honest, to be present, to live with care. And through this, the journey continues, not in temples of stone, but in the sacred temple of your own breath, your own awareness. You see, you are not just learning about the Buddha. You are remembering your own Buddha nature. You are the path. You are the awakening. You are the calm beneath the storm, the stillness behind the thought, the light behind the eyes. Let the story of the Buddha be a lantern for your own journey, not a legend to admire, but a life to emulate. And remember, you don't need to renounce everything. You don't need to shave your head or wear robes. You don't even need to believe in Buddhism. You only need to begin where you are, with honesty, with curiosity, with compassion. Right now, in this very breath, the journey continues. Close your eyes gently. Let your spine rise like the Bodhi tree, rooted and unwavering. Feel the earth beneath you, the same earth where Siddhartha once walked. Feel your breath, the same rhythm that filled his lungs. You are not separate. You are not late. You are not broken. The peace you seek is not far. It is not hidden. It is here, in this stillness. Let each breath be a bow to the present moment. Let each thought pass like clouds across the sky. Let each heartbeat remind you, you are awareness, you are clarity, you are love. Walk gently, dear soul. The Buddha walks with in your footsteps, in your silence, in your smile. And the path is always here, waiting, not in some distant monastery, but in the quiet now,